Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie sitting with Andrew, and we got from friends to foes, from coaches on the same bench to opposing benches. Brett Larson, fresh off his gold medal with Matt Carle. Wait, nope, wrong.
Nope.
David Carle.
Yeah, there we go.
Sharing the bench of the World Juniors as Team USA, as predicted by our Team USA World Juniors guru Jake Baskin. I just slipped into Huskies. That Team USA wins gold
Over Sweden too. He called
over
that.
Sweden. Yep, exactly. And then those two coaches against each other here this weekend. Starman going to be in the booth as it's on CBS Sports. So this is going to be one of those stories that Starman's going to bring up for the next couple of years. Especially World Junior time. You know, I could just hear him with the story about, last year you had these coaches with each other. Then the next week there were foes against each other in the NCHC. What a gauntlet that conference is. Something along those lines. That's my Starman impression. And then he rants about how much he hates bicycle lanes in New York City. That's
the intro, the pre-gamer really writes itself for the Starman, I think.
Sure enough. Congratulations to Brett Larson. Little feather in his cap. And it was overall, I know obviously we're going to talk quite a bit about Denver here coming up, but I was able to watch a couple of the illegal streams through just YouTube because NHL Network is incredibly hard to get on a regular cable package. Exciting games and exciting teams. USA ends up going undefeated, and it was a heck of a tournament, and especially opening up in the third period against Sweden. Were you able to catch any of those games?
Yeah, the last two in particular, it was looking a little hairy there, down 2-0 against Finland, which Finland started the tournament with a major dud, and they looked when the U.S. drew them for that semifinal game. I was like, okay, well, this shouldn't be too difficult. And then getting behind 2-0 pretty early, needed to dig deep to overcome that deficit. And I think Sweden's the better team. I mean, the final score wouldn't indicate that, but obviously still were tested pretty well by the Swedes. But I thought throughout that game, the Americans just were the more skilled team. This was a great team, and high expectations for this tournament. And I think they passed the test. And Canada had a dud of a tournament. Some of it was strange. Like the Germany had to hold on in the elimination game. I mean, they made the relegation game because they lost Latvia, surprisingly, and then needed to go to overtime, I believe, to beat Norway to just stay in the field for next year. But then they gave like Canada a run for their money in the group play, and just some odd results, but excellent play from what I was able to catch, really as always. And now you go into next year, a bunch of these Americans get to come back next year, still age eligible. So as the defending champs, maybe they now have the target on the back. And also too, we saw the news drop that these World Juniors games are coming to the Twin Cities pretty soon.
Yeah.
Maybe would you go to that event if you had a chance?
100%.
Because there's an outside chance they might. I mean, they're mentioning that some of the group play games might be outside the Twin Cities. Things like Mankato or St. Cloud, or maybe like Blaine, because they like to spread out some of the group play action. But you know, if you can't catch it, if they don't come up to St. Cloud, you can at least go down to, you know, Metairon game, or any of those games would be, I think, really fun. I might come back for those games. It'd be a pretty fun. I saw some of the U18s a couple years ago, but it's nothing really compared to the U20s. It's definitely a big draw. So good to see that news drop as well. And obviously congrats to Team USA as they get the job done. And congrats again, keeping it local here to Brett Larson as the assistant coach, picking up the gold medal. Go Huskies.
Yeah. Hashtag local angle. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely love to go to some of the games. And I don't know if it was just pre-tournament games or scrimmages lined up or anything along those lines in some of the surrounding areas, but because it sounded like the main hosts were going to be Minneapolis and St. Paul at Mariucci and
and the X. The X would have the gold medal game. But
yeah,
they play even like preliminary games before the group play even starts. And I wouldn't be surprised if an out-state venue or two gets into that action. So keep your eye on that for more developments. But still, a marquee hockey event coming to Minnesota for the first time in like 40 years. They played some Thief River games in Thief River in 2005 when the main tournament was at Grand Forks, but those don't really count. The last time that the final was in the Twin Cities was, I believe, 82. So it's been a long time. And now that this tournament
has evolved so much too since then.
And the American, I mean, chart USA Hockey's progression since 1982. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, that's definitely a circle the date tournament, even 2 years out. So looking forward to that already.
Yeah. So that's something, you know, I've got my eye on. I would like to go to some of those games. I was really close to pulling the trigger on the PWHL as well, as Minnesota starts out 2-0. Their home opener. And I just couldn't do it because of the price. And I know like ticket itself isn't that expensive, but you know, I've got a family of 5 and the price plus Ticketmaster fees was about $35 a pop. And you know, the family of 5, all that kind of adds up on a spontaneous trip. You know, I got daycare, so I can't have a lot of those spontaneous trips. So it's a little bit bummer that I wasn't able to go to that, because that would have been a fun kind of event for everyone, and it looked like a rocking atmosphere too. Good game.
Are they playing all their
we
games?
have Clay Matvick on the call, hashtag local angle again,
right?
Who is doing the play-by-play for them. So
are they playing all their games at the X?
Yes.
Yeah, 13,000 in the building for the Saturday game. Very impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, don't talk to me about good tips on ticket buying. My brother is coming up here. We're going to go to a Coyotes game in a couple of weeks. Don't use the site SeatGeek, because it's not refundable, even what they claim it is. And I spent way too much money on a couple of seats, and it looks like I'm stuck with them. So I would love to be able to get away with $35 plus fees. I'll tell you that. But I guess I'm going to have to really enjoy that Coyotes Predators game in a few weeks here. So keep you posted on that.
Please do. So I think I've seen enough Logan Cooley goals. I don't want to see any more. So Huskies traveling to Denver. Just a huge series coming up. Really, I would say we could extend it the next 3 series, but especially these next 2 with Denver and North Dakota. We can kind of really see what this team is kind of made of against people that are teams that are just higher in the pairwise right now. You know, right now, I believe with the conclusion of Minnesota beating CC, that St. Cloud State right now is at 13th in the pairwise. And, you know, we've got North Dakota and Denver sitting up there at 6 and 7, with essentially being locks to make the tournament. So it's, you know, this is kind of a big matchup where we can make up some of that ground, where we kind of stumbled a little bit in some of our non-conference. So it's a really key matchups here coming up, and I really like to see what we have matching up against these teams. I'm optimistic, especially how we played against Bemidji. I know the competition, but we took care of business how we should have, which is always kind of what I'm looking for. So kind of going into Denver, going into Magnus, what are your thoughts on the series coming up?
Yeah, it's going to be a test. And this Denver team is a real throwback to a different age of hockey. It's a run and gun. 80s. Yeah, we're throwing up 6 goals a game and we're giving up 5. And that's kind of been their season. We've chronicled their goaltending, let's be nice and call them issues, with injuries and ineffectiveness, tainting the entire season for them. Tainting, I say, but they, as you mentioned, still in 7th in the pairwise. So it hasn't sank them for this season. Sunk, what would be the correct past participle there? I wasn't an English major, but still at,
I think it's sunk.
Sunk. Was it had sunk? I think it would be had sunk. Anyway, let me know if I did that right, Dan Jacobson. But still at a sub 890 save percentage collectively as a team this year. And now they got Matt Davis back. He played both of these games this past week against Niagara. Played them without David Carle behind the bench, without Zeev Buyum at the point, who was also at the World Juniors. I think that Rizzo did he play as well? I know he was. Yeah, he played. He played in some other. I didn't realize there was like another tournament that goes around the same time the U20s do. It was a Canadian thing, and so he was playing that, but that must have ended before this Niagara series occurred. But so a little bit shorthanded for Denver this weekend, but obviously it's Niagara. They didn't really break much of a sweat. The Friday game was a bit of a tight affair for a while, but Denver was able to go away winning on Saturday, and again, not a terribly difficult opponent. And so I said Matt Davis played both of those games. He was the prohibitive starter coming into the year. He was Corona's backup last year, put up good numbers in part-time play the last 2 years, but had a bit of a rough start to this season. And then they were sort of scrambling with Freddie Halleck and even dipping into this Paxton Geisel, who they plucked out of the USHL a little bit early just because they were so struggling for someone to stop the puck. And like I said, the numbers are pretty ugly goaltending wise for them. But as ugly as they are in that category, they're really eye-popping from the offensive standpoint. We mentioned Rizzo leading this team with 32 points already. Most of that assists, 7 goals, 25 assists. He's a real playmaker type, and he can finish too. He's going to get more than 7 goals this year. I wouldn't be surprised he cracks 20 even. They already got, Devine's also at 30. They've got like 13 guys with double-digit points already. And they played 20 games, and they've scored 3 goals in every one of them. They've scored 4 more goals in all of those except 4 games. So the 4 games that they've only scored 3 goals, they're 1-3 in those games. So, 3 goals, if that's your lowest goal total of the year, that's really impressive. But that just underlines the fact that if you keep the team off the board, you get increase your chances of winning against this high-powered offense. And that's obviously going to be key this weekend. But it's a team that runs, 3-4 lines deep. They continue to be able to cycle through new guys. Mikko Matika, freshman, he's got 12 goals already this year. Bros, we saw him with the Gophers a couple years ago, had a good year for Denver last year. He's more like a third line guy for them, but he's been effective in his time at Denver. They've got a lot of high scoring defensemen. We've mentioned Zeev Buyum, who's leading the league in defensive scoring as a freshman. And he's got his brother there too, Shai, nothing to sneeze at himself. Another freshman of Boston Buckberger already got 16 points as a freshman.
I cannot believe that's her real name.
And we've mentioned too how much they love the letter B in this team. Booyam, Barons, Buckburger, two Booyams, Bros. They love the B's. But so they get their offense from their forwards, from their defensemen. They really spread it around, and it's a lethal offense. Perhaps the best offensive team in the country. And with that too, good power play has to be expected at 24%. So I mean, to keep this team off the scoreboard is going to be obviously important. I think St. Cloud has that capability. We've been impressed at times. It maybe hasn't been the most consistent, but certainly of late, their defense has been doing up to the task. And we saw in the Bemidji series, maybe we've got some offense finally kicking into high gear too. Yes, that's Bemidji, but I guess you do have to take into account with Denver's gaudy offensive numbers. Yeah, they did play Niagara for a series. They played a terrible Yale team. Some of their non-conference opponents haven't been the best, but that's not to discredit Denver at all. It's going to be a tough series for them, but for some reason I'm confident that I think they can get a split out of the series. Maybe that's expecting too much, and considering recent history as well, no regulation wins for St. Cloud in Denver since 2015. They did win in overtime last year, but no regulation wins since Jim Montgomery was there as coach. Since I was in the building, actually, for that last win in Denver. So it's been a bit of a house of horrors for them. Let's hope that they can turn the tide. And I don't know, thinking that St. Cloud's got the week off between the Bemidji series and this series, whereas Denver played this past weekend, maybe there was a rest factor. I'm not sure. For some reason, just my gut tells me I think St. Cloud's going to get a win this weekend. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, looking over, like you said, goals, how well they've been able to score, averaging 5.25 goals per game midway through the season. That's, yeah, it's just a gaudy stat. But, with that is their defense, and like you said about what they're able to give up, and just limiting their firepower is a good recipe because you're able to score at them almost at will. Sitting there at averaging over 3 goals against per game, and they've had. But it's not like the competition that they've had has been like they've had some decent competition. You can say what you want about Arizona State, or they did sweep Alaska, which obviously there was a blemish from St. Cloud on that. The split against Omaha, the split against North Dakota, and that one win that they needed was overtime win. So I think it's one, just limit their chances, just play smart, solid hockey. And, I think you're going to be able to kind of capitalize on just their leaky goals and the leaky goals that they give up. So I do think that the Huskies are going to take a game there in Denver, and probably come out with a split is what I would say is probably the easiest call you can make, and maybe that's the most likely outcome. But just looking at what our defense has been able to do, I like our goaltending much better, and I don't, they haven't played a team, I don't think, that has been as good defensively as us. I know Western Michigan has better stats when it comes to that, but they've had how many games against Lindenwood, right? So they Denver's, I don't know. So that's just kind of what I'm kind of looking at and kind of thinking, is that that's going to be the key. Their penalty kill also has not been great, with the bad goaltending and the leaky defense. they can put up the points. But yeah, it's going to be a race to 4. And if we can keep them under 4, I really like our chances. And if our team is starting to come around on the score sheet, if Ingram, he's going to have a lot more confidence coming up. If we get the monkey off of Okabe's back, and he starts kind of rattling in some goals and whatnot, this is the weekend to kind of do it and kick it into high gear and really kind of put a good stamp the fact that, hey, the St. Cloud team is going to be a force here towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I would say if you mentioning their non-conference or kind of their schedule, mentioning it, and they did go out east early in the year playing Providence and BC, losing against Providence and beating BC, both 4-3 games, both very good games. I was able to catch some of both of those games, and Providence is probably the best. You're mentioning like defensive teams. I'm just kind of looking at the stats here. And Providence has, allowed the second fewest goals in the country this year. They've allowed the fewest shots per game on average this year. So, I mean, take that as far as, they're one of the few teams to beat Denver this year, and they were able to hold them to 3 goals, which is they're tied for their season low, and they were able to get a win out of it. So maybe obviously that's the formula to go on here for to beat Denver. Also saw this last year with Denver as well. Not a very good penalty kill team, kind of vulnerable there. And again, at 42nd in the country at penalty kill percentage, under 80%. They do have 6 shorthanded goals this year, so kind of a high risk, high reward penalty kill. They'll give up some goals, but they'll also score some coming back on that shorthanded break as well. So possibly another vulnerability for the Huskies to expose. I've been a little disappointed with the Huskies' power play of late. Yes, they scored some late ones against Bemidji that second game, but that was after like 5 or 6 missed opportunities. And so it's just been kind of an inconsistent power play. And these are the series where you can't have a dry spell against this team. If you have these opportunities, you got to bury them. And so I think these are going to be great games. I like the how both of these teams are built. Obviously, I think Denver's got the edge offensively, but I think St. Cloud has the edge defensively. And those are intriguing battles because one of those units has to bend. And it'll be interesting who does. And as you mentioned, we got the Star Band in the building on Friday, national broadcast. And everyone gets a scramble to how they get to find out where they're going to watch this game. 8 p.m. Central Time, I believe. And so it should be a spicy one. I think we
should also look to see what mid-major basketball game is going to be preceding.
Yes. I'm going to go Kent State is going to be involved. Do you got a guess?
State.
The Golden Flashes.
I do not have a guess at the moment. What are your thoughts on? So you said, what was the last game that we were able to beat them at Magnus?
2015. It would have been December of 2015, the 15-16 season, the Ferris F and State year.
Really? Oh, that's
they
right.
Swept them that year, or that series. They swept them.
Really? Has it been that long since I've been out to Magnus? When did Tim Tebow? I Tebowed in front of it, and we won 3-2. What year was that?
That would have been before that.
No kidding.
I think so.
I still don't have that picture. Zamora, if you're listening, try to get that picture of me Tebowing in front of Magnus.
When you're saying Tebow, and that was like a big trend, I'm thinking I pegged that as like 2012, like that year, earlier than 2015.
Yep, I do remember. Oh, we can hit up. Should we hit up random box score?
Sure. I've got the box score. Do you want to take some guesses? That's the most recent 3-2 score I see.
Because I think we won 3-0.
2012, 2013, the Frozen Four year, the first one. That was November of 2012, 3-0.
Yeah, because I remember because after we left, we Tebowed I T-bowed right in front of it because I remember bringing up at the game. I brought up how we were just crushing them, and that I hope they don't have Rhett McShawney to all of a sudden pop 3 goals in anymore. And then everybody I was with was ticked off at me for like potential jinxing of the team. So I had to shut up for the rest of the 10 minutes of the third period. But yeah, so we won 3-0. And I remember it was all the Tebow stuff was happening there in Denver. And then I think we got crushed like the next night because I had this Denver fan, like every goal, who would just like run up to me and just scream in my face. And he was, like on a date or something, or with his sister, or I don't know which one. Cause I was like, this can't be your actual boyfriend, that this guy just like to just go scream in someone's face after your team scores a goal. And I'm like, congrats on your split, dude. Anyway.
Yeah, so this is the 2012-2013 season. It would have been St. Cloud's first Frozen Four run. LeBlanc's Hobie year.
Oh, sure enough, LeBlanc Hobie year.
So this was November 2nd of 2012. 3-0 win. We've got 2 different goal scorers. So
2 goals.
One guy had 2 goals, and one guy had 1 goal.
Okay. Nick Dowd.
Correct.
Nick Dowd had the 2 goals. Because his second goal, he also got a goaltender interference call. And it was the weirdest thing. Like at the same time, he scored a goal.
11:39 of the third period.
Got a goaltender interference call.
So how does that work?
I don't remember how it
does
worked,
a goal
but I remember
count?
it stuck out in my head. Like, how the heck? Like, because I think what happened is basically he shot it, it went in, and then just his momentum afterwards just carried him into. God, who would have been the goalie at that time?
You know who it is, too. It's one of those names you'd be like, oh, yep.
Well, let's see. Let's go back.
He
was
wasn't
it Britain?
Very good. I was going to give you like an England, London type clue, but you didn't need that. So very good. Sam Britain.
Yeah, I think that's, if I could find that clip, I'm gonna.
I'd love to. I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I remember.
And so how about the so Dowd scored the first goal and the third goal.
And the third goal.
Who would have been the sandwich in there?
Who would have been the middle? I do not.
It's one of your faves.
One of my all-time faves.
It's on your Mount Rushmore.
It's on my Rushmore. Oh, Coleslaw then.
Callie Coleslaw. Yep.
Okay.
And so Jensen, a couple of assists. LeBlanc had 1 assist. Andrew Prochnow had 1 assist. Kevin Gravel had an assist. And this guy had an assist. His last name becomes a dance if you change the first letter from an H to a P.
Joey Holka.
Very, very good. The Holka Polka came out to play that game.
Right away as you were talking about that, as this guy had an assist. But for some reason, my mind always goes to Milan. Garrett Milan as this guy.
Who played in the game. He had 4 shots on goal. A team high.
Geez.
Actually, 4 shots on goal, tied for the team high with this other guy. Speaking of B's, he's a BB initials.
Brooks Birch.
You're on fire today. Very good. Very good.
When you said that, I was going to, is it Tim Daly? I was hoping
also
we were going to have
game.
a wings.
Tim Daly was a +2 that game. Team high, +2.
Well, I mean, we scored 3, so. It was a shutout too.
Garrett Milan took a penalty that game. Yes, Farragher was in net. Yeah, Milan took a roughing penalty, matching minors 3 minutes into the game.
Look at that.
And then my guy, Jared Raby, got on the score sheet with 2 minutes for tripping halfway through the second period, which that checks out. Looking at this Denver team, LaLeggia, he was great. The Shores.
They had the Shores,
Quentin,
right?
They were good. Yep. But I'm not, Ty Loney, that name rings a bell, but you remember Chris Knowlton? Because I don't. No. Dakota Murmis, I think he's been in the NA. He's played that Wild, I think. I didn't know he played for Denver. But yeah, Garrett Allen, Larkin Jacobson. Is that Dan Jacobson's relative? A lot of kind of head scratcher. This must not have been the best Denver team, obviously, but always good to go back in time. So one of the few wins at Magnus. They don't come often, but this is one of the last.
It's
couple.
Probably the lighting there.
Yes, I think you're right. Or the ice. I mean, because we've had ice issues this year at Magnus, so we can't take the ice for granted anymore there. So let's hope that let's hope that we don't have a surprise reschedule game on Sunday afternoon this weekend.
Especially for you, because are you attending that game?
This series? No. I'm going out to
series?
Miami. I'm.
That's right.
I've got all my travel arrangements. I think we're gonna hit the beach one of those days.
Yeah, there you go.
And
the Skyline Chili.
Well, I mean, I don't know if they have Skyline Chili down in Florida and South Beach, but I don't know. We're gonna be hitting the beach, and it's supposed to be like 70 degrees that time of year in Miami, so it should be great. It's a little nippy here today. It's got into the 40s, so I'm kind of looking.
Are you able to survive in warm Arizona weather in the 40s?
I got to go to Florida for some warm weather. I'm just looking forward to this Miami trip. So, but that's in a little bit. So I still got a little bit to go until I travel there. But I am looking forward to it. Sunshine State.
Here at Milan. I had a friend, a coworker. We always went to the games because like my work, were sponsors and they had season tickets and they would always have raffles. So I had like 4 or 5 friends and myself. We would always like put our names in and we would always just pick each other to go with. So I always pretty much had tickets to those games for free. And my buddy Ryan Cassidy, every time that he was always really excited when Garrett Milan played because he called him Scummy Milan because he was just that kind of a player. So
good old Scum. The scumbag. Love him.
Yeah. Basically, if our defense shows up, I think we at minimum get 3 points. Denver has done nothing this season to prove that they can do anything to stop a puck and to stop goals from being scored. And I think we've got, some of the best defense that they're going to go up against all year. And it's going to be kind of a good opportunity to show them. And it's going to be also a really good test, I think, for Warren Clark to kind of see his development and see where he's at against, some incredibly skilled playmakers because they've got him in spades there at Denver.
Indeed. And we should say too, like, talking about special teams and Denver, having some vulnerability in terms of their penalty kill, not super great. Look at St. Cloud State's penalty kill, 5th in the nation, 87.5%. This has been a strength this year. And it's another one of those units like last year. It's kind of coinciding with the February swoon, but there was some penalty kill issues down the stretch last year, and it can go in waves. Special teams just in general can, but at this point in the season, halfway through, St. Cloud's penalty kill has been top notch, and especially against a team like Denver on the road. If they can pitch a shutout as a unit this weekend, that will go a long way to at least getting a split in the series too. So keep an eye on special teams in particular this weekend.
Does VD get his 100th point?
Yes.
Drop bet, I guess.
Yes, and it'll be on the power play.
Will it be a goal or an assist?
It'll be a goal. It'll be a goal on the power play.
Gotcha. Power play goal.
And it'll be early. It's going to be it'll be in the first period on Friday.
First period? First 5 minutes?
No, I won't go that far, but I'll go first period in Friday's game.
I can see us going up 1-0 really early on Friday.
See, but it gives me flashbacks to that when we were talking about Shayak coaching for Larson in previous times where Larson was away from the team, that 3-0 lead against Denver. I think it was also a CBS game, and it was a 3-0 lead in the first period, and was it 7-4 was the final? I mean, they got smoked the rest of the way. And so I don't want to do the Kevin Gorg and say you want to stay 0-0 as long as possible in this game. Like I'd take a 3-0 lead any day, but
it was 8-5.
8-5. Yeah.
Denver had 50 shots on goal.
Yeah. So it's somewhat, sometimes if you get up on them, it wakes them up, and the beast arises, and you get steamrolled that by the next time you blink. So it's just you just got to play a solid 60-minute defensive game, at least with that defensive unit. You got to score goals, obviously, and I think that's where Denver's vulnerable, because they're going to give up a few. But as long as you're not giving them up, that's the recipe for winning: outscoring your opponent, not giving up as many as you score. So
that's why you tuned into this podcast for this analysis. Yeah, you were talking about like those players on Denver's team on the in 2013 and whatnot, the 2012-2013 season. Just coincide with the goal scorers on this one, where you have Carter Savoy, Brett Stapley, Cameron Wright, Cole Gutman, Bobby Brink. A little, I mean, maybe recency bias goes into it a little bit, but
and those weren't just bad Denver teams. I believe that 12-13 team made the tournament that year. I mean, so they certainly weren't bad. Yeah. But it's just we've seen them the last couple of years. Like this Carter King, he's like third on the team in scoring. He was like, I remember it was that series, the game after the 8-5 game. It was a tighter game, 2-1 maybe, and Carter King scored the winner there. And he's at that point like a fourth line, like Will Hammer type. And I'm like, you can't give up game-winning goals to this guy. Well, he's turned into this like beast. He's definitely in that Dan Chronic, a little bit more athletic, but certainly in that mold, let's say. But he's become a real effective kind of grinder type player, and really producing. He's going to probably put up a 40-point year this year, which if you'd have said 2 years ago that guy's going to get 40 points in a career, I would have laughed, much less 40 points in a season. Well, he's well on his way for that. So dangerous team running 4 lines deep.
Yep, exactly. So switch over to the women. Women had exhibition game and against St. Thomas. Not really any notes about it. And I didn't go to it. I did see on Twitter, Fight the Pants. Appreciate a little bit of an update there, but yeah, just kind of gave a couple of notes that it was just 2 periods were played, 4-1, victory, I guess you can say. But kind of the big thing is Himlarova kind of switched back and forth between forward and D. And we have a new player that might be kind of jumping in for the back in the back half of the season on defense. And of course, I closed out the tab of her name,
Carmen Bray.
Thank you so much. Yep, Carmen Bray.
Which, I mean, this is a scrimmage exhibition game. If I would assume that her playing in this game doesn't mean that she's going to play the rest of the year and that they can maintain a red shirt on her. So I don't know. It's possible that they are warming her up in order to play defense in order for Himlarova to shift to forward, which I would be in favor of. You might be able to do that without taking the red shirt off of Bray as well. I mean, I don't know anything about Carmen Bray, but
I know nothing about red shirts and the rules. So.
And according to your source, no Delmonico sighting, which
no Delmonico.
It's a little death every time you hear that.
I think, I mean, I don't want to say the dream is dead, but it looks like the dream is dead.
We should probably hope that she doesn't play, because if she does, then like 3 forwards have gotten injured for them to take the red shirt off. So we can start the Delmonico Patty Kaz culminating career next year. But as far as this year goes, we got second half of the season positioned at this point inside the pairwise gate at number 7 in the pairwise. Quinnipiac gave St. Cloud a bit of a favor if you want to look at it that way. I mean, Quinnipiac's now at 6, but they knocked Duluth down to 9 in the pairwise.
9 in the pairwise?
Number 9.
Nine.
With their series this past weekend. So that's more bad news for Duluth than it is bad news for the Huskies, obviously. But you've got a ECAC team that jumped you this weekend. But so you're well positioned right now. What you did in the first half, like I said, getting points in half of the games against the top 4 teams. That put you in the position you're at now. You feel like if you can replicate that feat in the second half, getting points in half of the 4 of the remaining 8 games against the top 4 teams in the WCHA. I mean, I guess St. Cloud's in the top 4. We're counting Duluth among the top 4 contenders in the WCHA that St. Cloud has to face the rest of the way. So if you do that, that bodes well for you to make the tournament. But the other thing there is you've got 6 other games against the lower teams in the WCHA, and you got to run the table against those teams. And the first of that set of 6 games against the Also-Rans is this weekend, and that's at home against Mankato. You've got St. Thomas with a home and home next weekend. You really got to go 4-0 against these teams in the next 2 weekends, and really no, you can't go to even overtime to make that happen, because losses against these teams aren't going to bode well, because it's going to be so close in the at-large bids. You just don't want to make your task any more difficult than it already is. Now, Mankato, like I said, I just called them an also-ran, and so I guess I'm not really respecting them very much. I mean, they're not a great team. St. Cloud was able to sweep them earlier this season. It was similar to, I thought, the St. Thomas series that St. Cloud played in the first half, where the games were pretty tight and probably a little too tight for comfort in retrospect. And both of those series, I'm like, oh, Mankato's got these 2 goalies played really well. This Barbaro and Fauché played really well in that series. Same with the St. Thomas goalies. But you look at all of those goalies' numbers are not very good. Their numbers overall. So it's more like St. Cloud just was lacking a finishing touch in those previous series. I just want the wins, but I'd really like to see like some convincing wins here. Maybe that's too much to ask, but this is a Mankato team that just swept Lindenwood, but needed to come back from a 2-goal deficit in the Saturday game just to win that game 4-3 against a Lindenwood team that St. Cloud handled pretty handily earlier in the season in the Icebreaker tournament. And so, yeah, you've seen this team already. You are the more talented team, and it's just kind of a take care of business weekend. Are you confident that this team will take care of business against the Mavericks?
Yeah, I think so. And like, this is a time also where I'd like to see a good, like a solid 5-1 4-0 performance. Like, not really anything in question. I don't want to kind of tighten it up 1-0 into the third or things like that, but like, just this team needs to find and generate some goal scoring, and hopefully with Sorial is kind of getting it back or getting it on track. Not to say it wasn't I mean, she's a freshman, but kind of her emergence, and Avery Farrell's emergence as well, gets a little bit more of that supporting, because Emma Gentry can't just do it herself. Bowlby feels like it's cooled off a little bit. I know she scored against Ohio State, but I mean, there was a time earlier in the season where it felt like she was scoring a lot more often, where she was kind of that key transfer. So but I just like to see some of that depth scoring kind of come through and shine through. And I think this is kind of a good time to get some of those players kind of on the right page, all playing together, where you've got Minnesota, you got Mankato and St. Thomas, get some of that confidence and get that boost before you start round 2 of the gauntlet here coming up, where you've got some powerful games against who do we have after that? Ohio State.
Ohio State after St. Thomas. So this month is home heavy. You've just got the one single road game at St. Thomas. The rest of the games are at home, including, like we mentioned, the Ohio State series at the end of the month. But then you flip the calendar to February, and it becomes a road trip basically that whole month, except one home game against the Gophers. The rest of them are at home, or excuse me, on the road. So you get kind of a fair split there between it's all home and then it's all on the road. And that month of February is going to be, as you said, quite the gauntlet. But you got to take these series one at a time. You can't look ahead past Mankato. We're expecting them to get the job done this weekend. And I agree. I hope to see the scores that you kind of mentioned. I don't really want to sweat through these, but you can't take them lightly either. And just get the job done. We've been doing every other game flip-flop with Ahola and Choback, which means that because Ahola ended the first half against Duluth, means that JoJo's up on Friday. Is that going to be the method in the second half as well? You expect it's going to be Choback on Friday and Ahola on Saturday for the rest of the season this way out? Yeah. Or do you feel like Ahola is going to take the reins here, as her numbers have been just a tad better than JoJo the whole year?
Nope. I do think it's going to be just, from what Adolski has said and what I believe, I don't think he's going to be changing course when it comes to it. I think he's going to feel confident, either one that is in net. So I think he's just going to kind of keep the rotation going. I do think the season ends, though, with Choback in net. I think just, whether if we're on the outside looking in or anything along those lines, I don't know. But, just kind of how the rotation works. I don't know. I do like Ahola better, and you can look at it's pretty obvious to see why when you look at the stats and even how they play a little bit. But I think just positionally sound how Ahola is. And I think she's probably the best positionally sound goaltender I've seen in a Huskies uniform. Even going back to, obviously, I don't even know who you would even compare to how poised she is in net. Every Huskies goaltender that we've had that you can think of on the echelon of great goaltenders had a little bit of a slinky spine at times. You don't see that with Ahola. So, yeah, I think this rotation is going to continue, for better or for worse. But I think the last loss of the year is probably going to fall on Choback's shoulders. And I hope I'm wrong.
Meaning that even in the playoffs, if it's a regional weekend, they would split action. You think?
Yes, I think so.
I think we might see a 04-05 Denver situation. We did that research last year where they did a even Friday-Saturday split between Fisher and Menino, except in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
And then they went with Menino. I think that if you make the tournament, I think Ahola might get both games in the regional if they play a second game, I should say. At least I would think that she's going to get the first game. And that if that means, it depends on how they do in the WCHA playoffs. Mm-hmm. But if they were to continue an even split, it's a possibility that Ahola could play back-to-back games. If the first game of the NCAAs, she would have played the previous game. You know what I'm saying? I would think that if the first game in the NCAAs, doesn't matter if Ahola played the game before, I think she's going to play game one of the playoffs. Maybe they come back with Choback in game two, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do something different come NCAA time. But we've got a ways until that develops. So let's just enjoy the season, and hopefully we can get some pair of wins here this weekend against the Mavs.
Yep. Exactly. So, anything else? Nationwide. I know CC and Minnesota, like I said earlier, Minnesota ended up winning the second game. So that was a split at Mariucci. kind of anything else around? You went to a couple hockey games, right? You saw Omaha play. Did you see Omaha play?
I did see Omaha play. They were in the Desert Hockey Classic, which second year in a row that I've went to this mid-season tournament up in Tempe at the Mullet, home of the Sun Devils. And so this year I went to the Saturday game, so I didn't know who was playing like in advance. Obviously, I knew when I was going up there who was going to play, but depending on the results of the Friday games, what the matchups exactly were going to be. And it turned out it was UMass Lowell versus Harvard in the first game, and then Omaha versus ASU for the title of the Desert Hockey Classic for the nightcap. And yeah, it was an interesting 2 games. The first game was a bit of a dud. UMass Lowell really stuck it to Harvard, who is just awful. We're gonna go to the pick the field here in a little bit, and I know that you picked Harvard to make the tournament in our October pick the field. Well, I'm not going to take a complete victory lap over that because I did not pick them.
I don't remember that happening.
I can't say that.
I can't stop the count.
I'm not going to blame you too much because they would have been like right on the fringe for me. I was just like, yeah, they're good. They're just a little young. They're a little of a lot of things.
They're a little of a lot bad.
With 1 win so far this year, count it, 1 effing win. 9-3 is their record. They got down 4-0 halfway through the game against a pretty bad, I should say, Lowell team as well. They've not had a very good season. Another team that you picked in October to make the tournament. But
what a dumb skit, or what a dumb
Oh, I like it. I like it a lot. We're gonna continue doing that. And Lowell, like their big problem, they just can't score. And for them to hang 7 goals on Harvard shows you. And at least 4 of those. I mean, one of the goals was an empty netter for Lowell, but I would say 4 of the 6 were bad goals to give up from the Harvard goaltender's perspective. They were not a good team at all. Hasn't been a very good couple months for Harvard as a college in general. They have a way to staying in the news. Their hockey teams have been like their women's hockey coach was ran out from a abuse scandal. Their men's team has 1 win this year, and still, they had some hype coming into this year. They got a bunch of draft picks on the team, and it's just been a disaster for them. And so this was the first time. So I mentioned, like, I always try to see like 1 game against every single college team, and I'm still working my way up. I got a bunch, mostly of the East, to go. And so this is the first game I've seen in person of Harvard and UMass Lowell. So I get to check those 2 off my list. But then so not much of a game there. But the nightcap was a
Harvard last year, 24-8-2 made the tournament. 21-11-3 made the tournament and won the ECAC the year before. Like, what a fall! What an epic fall for Harvard. This year,
it's been a disaster, and I don't know how exactly they right the ship. I mean, it's tough. It's I feel terrible. Bunch of underachievers there, and I want those kids to get a break one of these days.
These poor little Harvard kids.
I know. But so that was that game. Like I said, not terribly competitive, and that's one too. Like, I don't really have much of a rooting interest. If it was a rooting interest, it'd been against Harvard, because I'm not really all that. I mean, we are the Harvard of the Midwest. I don't know if we could say that anymore. I mean, I like to think that St. Cloud's president wouldn't have been a serial plagiarist, but so I don't know. Maybe Harvard shouldn't be the de facto best university that everyone brings up as a counterexample.
Yeah.
Maybe we're the UMass Lowell of the Midwest. Who knows? But typically, public versus private, I'm going to go with the public schools. There you go. But I didn't have much of a rooting interest. But it's like, at least just give me a game. Like. And when it's 4-0, Harvard scores a goal, and I'm like, all right, well, somewhat make it interesting. And then it was like a minute later, Lowell scores again. So it's like every time that Harvard would score a goal, it'd be Lowell would answer right away. And so just for 60%, 75% of the game, it was just kind of a non-competitive snoozer. So it was a little disappointing there. But the nightcap was, I thought, a better tilt, more of a defensive battle between Omaha and ASU. I mean, they traded some good scoring chances. I thought Lacozy really played well. Like Omaha would have played well for the first half of the game, kind of in control. But then ASU kind of the second half of the game was in control, and Lacozy was coming up huge with some key saves, and then ASU scores in the third, and then wins in overtime. So they win their own tournament for the first time, I believe. That won the Desert Hockey Classic. So good for them. I have a feeling we're going to get back to Arizona State later in the show, so I can bottle up some of that energy for later. But a fun series. There's I thought a decent amount of Omaha fans, and gives you kind of an idea of when St. Cloud gets into this conference, interested like what the St. Cloud contingent will be, because I think it's a really attractive venue, especially in this case, early January, being able to get out of Omaha and come down to Arizona is a nice little vacation for Omaha fans. And so it'd be nice to see the same thing happen when St. Cloud gets to play down there in conference play soon. So it's a nice arena. Like I said, I'm going there in a couple of weeks for a Coyotes game as well. And so it's I like it. This is like the fourth time I've been there, and yeah, I've got my little, I kind of walk around. I just do like standing room, and I got kind of my spots that I like, and so it's nice. I go to Gus's Pizza afterwards. It's like this New York style pizza joint that has 32-inch pizzas for sale.
Weird.
I was walking, because it's like where I park, I cut through this place to walk to the arena, and someone had bought two of them, and they opened the back door of their car, and they couldn't get the pizzas in the door. They were that cartoonishly large.
Wow.
And yeah, it's $38 for a 32-inch pizza. So
Jeez.
If you want a pizza that's the size of a truck tire, you can go to Gus's. It's pretty decent pizza. They have pizza by the slice too. I like go there after the games and get a slice, and so it's kind of nice. But gotcha. I got some spots when we go there next year or the year after, whenever it is. I'll be sure to plug my go-to spots for fans coming to the game.
It's kind of interesting, and I guess I've never asked you this. Next year, obviously we're not in the same 3-team grouping between Ohio State. What am I talking about? Arizona State and St. Cloud. St. Cloud has an off weekend, and Arizona's playing at home. Are you buying a ticket? You going to the game, or you just to catch an NCHC game anyway?
I typically have done that. The last 2 years, they played. It's this Desert Hockey Classic is played on 2 weekends that St. Cloud hasn't played. And then last year I watched them. It was Thanksgiving weekend when St. Cloud wasn't playing, and they were playing. Arizona State was playing the Gophers, and I went to that game. That was a great game. But I would go to more. But I've been disappointed the last 2 years. Like, both teams have an off week in February, and they're the same weekend these last 2 years. So I mean, I'm not going to go to an Arizona State game if St. Cloud's playing that same weekend.
Sure.
But yeah, I would go to more games. It's just their off weekends have not been lining up. Really, this year, this weekend was really the only chance. Yeah, I think so. I mean, there might have been one other weekend earlier this year that I think they played like Anchorage on a weekend that St. Cloud was off. It's like, I pass. So sometimes they don't have like a compelling enough opponent. But yeah, I would go to more if they lined up a little bit better.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm not gonna go to an Arizona State game in favor of watching a Huskies game. I'll put it that way.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, we've got this podcast, so I mean,
That's right.
You can't.
I can't flake out on my homework. So.
Yep, exactly. So, like overall for the Arizona State game, then how was the crowd? Was it?
It was all right. I mean, the Harvard Lowell game was a smattering.
Damn.
I mean,
Yeah,
there was some decent, one little section of Lowell fans and a smattering of Harvard connected people that were wearing like Harvard garb, parents or friends, I'm guessing, of the families or of the players' families. And so not much there. The Arizona State game was obviously better attended. Not a ton of students. I bet their students or school is still out, I would say, for session, because last year that Gopher game, again, that was Thanksgiving, so there could have been a little bit of a break there as well. But that was a pretty full building and a very raucous atmosphere. And this was not quite to that extent, but again, it's a little bit of an off season, or school wise at least, so you didn't have as much student participation. But yeah, it can be a fun building. It's just it's weird. They don't have the tradition yet, and they're sort of trying to manufacture it on the fly, and can be a tough sell. But it's certainly a developing hockey market. Youth hockey's been skyrocketing there in the last, I don't know, a decade or two. So I think it's the right time for a team like this, and it's excellent that they're getting into this conference from their perspective. I mean, you just look at their schedule this year. Yes, obviously being able to play so many home games. I think they got 24 home games this year. But there was a lot of Lindenwood and LIU and Anchorage, and they're playing some kind of dregs of college hockey just kind of out of necessity. When the schedule gets into, when they play Denver the last couple of years, that seems to be kind of a little budding rivalry, in terms of geography and Southwest battle. And they played some really entertaining games earlier this year. And so they can get some opportunities to get some rivalries going with them. And North Dakota, I'm sure, will bring a boatload of fans. Of course, I'm sitting there in the Harvard Lowell game, and like 3 rows in front of me, I see a guy with a TJ Oshie Sioux jersey. I'm like, every game I go to,
everywhere you go,
there's some North Dakota fan, even if the game doesn't involve them. So I'm sure when they play, there'll be a boatload of those fans coming down.
Yeah.
So
I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw a tweet once that said, if you see one UND jersey, there's 4 other around. They're like rats. Like that. You don't just see one mouse in the house. There's a lot more you're not seeing. And I think that's...
Well, I only saw one, but that doesn't mean that there weren't multiple.
There's probably a lot more around.
And one guy said, "Hey, Canadians fan," because I wear my Husky hat. And the last 2 times that I've been there, the only people that come up to be like, "Hey, Canadians," I'm like, "No, we just stole the logo." But St. Cloud State probably means nothing to these budding Arizona State college hockey fans. But hopefully they'll
Arizona can stay. Maybe if they beat us once, maybe
maybe they'll have to reckon with the Huskies, the force that is Go Huskies Woo. And so we'll treat them. We'll christen them into this new conference. Just wait.
Exactly. Do you think Arizona State gets the first CBS sports game next year?
Ooh, that's a good prop bet.
I don't see how they don't. Just straight up.
And it's going to be North Dakota, or it's either be North Dakota or Denver.
It's going to be North Dakota or Denver.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like every
year
they're
in the same pod, right?
Yes. So they're guaranteed to play 2 series, a home and away series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get a little hint on the next year's schedule, because I'm interested if St. Cloud plays down in Tempe next year, or if that's going to have to wait. Because those non-pod games, it sounds like you're going to play one of the teams in the other pods 2 series, meaning 1 home and 1 away series. And then the other 2 teams in those pods, you're just going to play 1 either home or road series. So it's not guaranteed you're going to play down in Arizona every year.
Yeah.
but like 2 out of 3 years probably. So certainly when they come down to this neck of the woods, I'm going to those games for sure. So looking forward to that.
Sure enough. I know we talked quite a bit about Arizona State, but should we just dive right into pairwise predictor half?
Sure.
We're unofficial halfway through the season, and considering how well I was predicting the field at the beginning of the season, as you so nicely brought up my Harvard and Mass Lowell predictions. How do you want to do this? How do you want to start?
So we're going men first.
Yep.
Okay. I always like to start out east and then work our way west. So we just kind of go conference by conference, see who you got out of that league, and we'll get to 16, and then we can analyze. So I always like to start with Atlantic because that's like the dartboard league.
Well, and here's the thing is maybe we could do Atlantic and CCHA because we can just knock.
You want to get them out of the way first?
Just get them out.
That's fair because we both got just one team out of those leagues, right?
I would imagine.
Yeah, that's what I have. I just have one team in each of those leagues.
Perfect. I'm sticking with Sacred Heart. You know, I want to be
like your commitment to the bit.
RIT is doing incredibly well,
and that's who I have.
They're on the rise, so I can see them winning it. But for the bit, and for the memes and the lulls, and please let me get one right, I'm going to go with Sacred Heart from Atlantic Hockey.
Who Sacred Heart technically, again, they've got one more game played than RIT, so by conference winning percentage, RIT's in first place, but by the raw point total, Sacred Heart is in first place. So if I were you, I would stick with Sacred Heart because I think I had Niagara at the beginning of the year, and that is not looking to be a good one. I think I picked RIT in October though, and I'm going to stick with them. They are the highest ranked team in pairwise out of the Atlantic Hockey. You should say too. I mean, at 19 in pairwise. And so 18, I should say, actually, with the updated pairwise 18. So within spitting distance of an at-large, I still think that's a unlikely scenario that they're going to get an at-large bid or a bid above either 15 or 16. Because I should mention, like, it's possible, particularly if RIT comes out of that league, they're probably going to be the 15th seed rather than the 16th seed. 16th seed is likely going to be CCHA, which is a bit of a wrinkle where I was just used to muscle memory, just placing the Atlantic winner as the 16th seed, but not this year because the CCHA has been a dumpster fire. And I'm interested to see who you've got coming out of that league.
I'm actually going to stick with Michigan Tech.
Okay.
So I am going to stay the course on that one. I believe, I guess I should double check, but I'm pretty sure I was pretty high on them because I think a lot of people were actually fairly high on Michigan Tech
at the beginning of the year.
At the beginning of the year,
in October, they went a winless October, and at that point, I went with Northern Michigan. I shifted to Northern Michigan. You shifted to Lake State. At that point, coming out of the CCHA. But you're going to go back to your preseason prediction, and you're going to go with Michigan Tech, which I certainly considered them. I think they're going to be the number one team. I think they're going to win the regular season trophy, if it still is the McNaughton. I know they own the cup, but
they own it.
So I don't know if that's still technically the award that they give off the CCHA regular season champ, but I think they're going to be the number one seed, but I think they're going to lose in the playoffs. And I don't really have a great reason for that other than I just don't really trust them. And so I'm going to go with Mankato, who's the highest ranked team in pairwise among the CCHA teams right now. It's faint praise with them at 30th in the pairwise.
Yeah, I was going to say
but could I envision Mankato going up to Houghton and winning a game in the CCHA playoffs? Sure. Because I don't really think that any of these teams are very good. Yes, Michigan Tech's getting Swankler for the second half, but based on what transpired to get him to Michigan Tech, I'm not sure if Michigan Tech really wants him in that clubhouse. So we'll see how it all shakes out. Just that team's just been kind of a mess all year, and I just don't trust them to get the job done. Even though I think, like I said, I think they're going to win the league in the regular season, but I think the winner is going to be a road team in the final, and I'm going to just pick Mankato. Maybe in terms of that wouldn't be too bad for the Huskies. I mean, they got swept by Mankato, so it's not like it's helping them if they do well, but it's going to make those losses look less bad, I guess. Yeah. So I'll go with Mankato out of the league, but Michigan Tech is a solid pick too.
Michigan, fresh off a GLI victory, end up winning 3-2, 3-2 in overtime against Alaska, and then 3-3 against Michigan State, who I think maybe is the surprise of Wisconsin. But I did not expect Michigan State to be hanging in there.
They were solid,
firmly in the tournament. So, I set this up a little bit differently, so I'm gonna have to kind of a little bit on the fly because
that's fine.
How I looked at this, and when I was looking at the pairwise and I was looking at the NCAA tournament, I kind of came up with there's two main keys to picking my field that I have to hitch my wagon to. The first key is I have to look at ECAC and what's going to happen there, because we have Quinnipiac, who is the only team that is good.
Only team in the top 20.
Only team in the top 20. And then it was last year, I believe, Colgate took a spot.
They got 4 teams in last year. Because it got Quinnipiac, Harvard, and Cornell were all at larges, and then Colgate won the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
They were not a league that would have suggested a 4-team league. Like the Big Ten got 4 teams in last year too.
Yeah.
For the ECAC to get as many teams in as Big Ten is kind of shocking, but
and that's famously also what bumped Alaska out. I believe Alaska was the last team out. Do I think that's going to happen? Like you said, there were 3 other at-larges that if they would have won the tournament, that doesn't take an at-large spot. Whereas here, do I trust Quinnipiac to run it? Otherwise, yes, a less deserving team is going to end up going. So that's one key I had to wrestle with and decide. And the other one was looking at Hockey East. And both of those, because right now, when we're looking at Hockey East, they've got 6 teams that are in pretty good position.
They have 6 teams within the top 14 right now.
Correct. Yeah. So, with those, obviously, BU, BC, Maine, incredibly surprising. Also, another big surprise. Providence, New Hampshire, really big surprise as well. And then UMass. So my keys are: do I think Quinnipiac and the ECAC is only going to be that's going to be their only representative, or is another one going to sneak in? And then do I think that all 6 teams are going to be there still by the end of the time, but when it's all said and done, or is there going to be 1 or 2 that drop out? And that's kind of what my biggest hang up was when I was kind of looking at the pairwise and looking at kind of predicting the field. Do you feel the same way, or do you feel like I'm a little bit off track when it comes to those were my linchpins of what I was wrestling with?
Yeah, the ECAC as a 1-team league, I did have to grapple with that, and I ended up. I do not think Quinnipiac is going to win the ECAC conference tournament. They've only done it once in their ECAC existence, and that's with the last 10 years of them being a fairly elite program. Like I said last year, this is not the prize for them. I don't think they really care about the ECAC tournament. They care about the NCAAs. And so I do think there's going to be a auto bid from that league winning the tournament, and then Quinnipiac's going to get in as an at-large. So I have 2 teams in the ECAC, and then, yeah, I mean, it's what I kind of looked at is I didn't look at it between Hockey East and ECAC between like grappling of positioning between a number of teams of those leagues. I kind of focus on what I've seen a strong correlation of stacking up the leagues by out of or interconference records in non-conference play. And this year, Hockey East, Big Ten, and NCAC, excuse me, those 3 leagues are clearly head and shoulders above the other 3 leagues. There was really, I think Big Ten is still number 1. I can check this on the fly, but they're all pretty close together in terms of percentage of non-conference winning percentage. But I believe Big Ten was still in front. Yeah, Big Ten's at 735 winning percentage, NCHC at 694, Hockey East at 683. And then the other 3 leagues all sub 40% winning percentages. And so what I'm seeing there is I don't see that each of any of those 3 top leagues is like head and shoulders above any of the others. So I kind of like, I'm just going to have all 3 of those leagues have the same amount of teams. So I've got 4 teams out of those 3 leagues. And then I've got the 2, the Atlantic and CCHA, which I know are 2 auto bid leagues. It really kind of comes down to, is ECAC going to be a 1 bid league or a 2 bid league, or the wild card being an independent, namely Arizona State or Alaska, be the really the 2 contenders to get a spot out of the independents. So I kind of started there. I kind of started with the number of teams that I think each league's going to get. And then, but there's even there, like, do I want 3 teams out of the Big Ten and 5 out of Hockey East, or adding 1 or subtracting 1 from the NCHC? Those fringe teams, like the 4th teams I have in each of those 3 leagues, those are all iffy. I could certainly swap them in with other candidates or add 1 of the fringe teams that didn't quite make the cut, add 1 and then subtract 1 from another conference. I mean, basically the top 8 in pairwise, or I guess the top 10, I feel relax. And then the other 6 were a mix between making the tournament and missing it. So I had 4 teams in each Hockey East, Big Ten, and NCHC. That's how I kind of helped to start my decision-making process.
That you just created maybe bracketology nightmare.
Oh, possibly. I didn't think of it that way.
just trying to avoid as best they can with interconference, but that goes out the window if you get 5 teams in, and with 3 conferences having 4, then is you create a little bit of a headache there.
Well, we've got 2 Eastern regionals and 2 Western regionals this year. It's not as thorny as it was last year when you really had 3 Eastern regionals and 1 West. So yeah, you can spread the love around. You can still have an all Minnesota team, or a 3 team Western regional, 3 team from Minnesota Western regional if you want. So yeah, there'll be something for those kind of fans. For ECAC, maybe
then ECAC. Then I am very curious on where you're.
So you said you're just doing Quinnipiac.
I'm just doing Quinnipiac,
and they're going to win the ECAC tour.
I regret my decision now after you brought up the fact that how they collapse in the ECAC playoffs, or they don't care about it.
There's no collapse. I don't think they really care too much.
So I mean that's a good point.
So but like last year, like even if I didn't think that Quinnipiac was going to play their heart out at the ECAC tournament, I wouldn't have picked Colgate to be the team to get out of that tournament. And I'm just picking the next best team out of that league from what I can gather, and that's Cornell. So again, can I put in my head that Cornell is going to win the ECAC tournament in Lake Placid? Sure. Like they've done that before, and they're a playoff season team. Coach has been there forever, and so it wouldn't shock me if Cornell makes the tournament. There's like teams that would shock, Colgate's not going to win the tournament this year. Clarkson's not going to win the tournament. Harvard, as we mentioned, is terrible. So it just doesn't seem like there was a ton of other great candidates out of that league. So where this is more I'm just playing the 3-dimensional chess that Pecknold's got bigger fish to fry, and that they're going to kind of take the ECAC tournament as sort of a practice dry run, and that some other team is going to be a little bit more hungry, and that team that I'm going to predict being more hungry is Cornell. So I'm going to pick them as the second ECAC team. And then for
you're kind of going to see them maybe being on that 16, 17, 18 spot, and then really
I don't think they will not be in the top 16. They're going to be outside the top 16, and they'll get in by winning the tournament out of it only. That's the only way that they're going to be able to get to the tournament.
I like it.
And then for Hockey East, you were mentioning we've got the 6 teams currently that are inside the gate. I said I've only got 4 making the final field. I guess I can divulge that 4. It's no real surprise, I guess. It is the top 4 in pairwise out of the league right now. BC, BU, Maine, and Providence. So I've got UNH and UMass out.
So I think you have New Hampshire out. I find that interesting.
Well, I mean, I certainly don't think there's going to be 6 teams making the tournament out of Hockey East. Now that the second half, or aside from the bean pot, it's all going to be conference play the rest of the way. And so you're going to have some cannibalization going on here among the conference members.
That's true.
Particularly at the lower levels of the conference. You had picked UNH in October. I didn't say it on the podcast, but I remember being more confident about Maine, although I didn't take them and you didn't take them either. I would have been more confident. Like, Maine strikes me as like next year could be what New Hampshire is doing. It's like what Maine's doing this year, New Hampshire could do next year. I think they're a little early, and I think that they're gonna fade a little bit. And same with UMass. I picked them in October, but I remember looking at their kind of underlying metrics, possession stats and such, and they weren't real great. If I was to pick between those two, if I was going to add a 5th Hockey East team, I'd probably put UMass ahead of UNH. I guess I just don't really trust UNH.
Sure.
And I really don't love Providence either, but I'm going to stick to my guns that they're going to make it as a 4 seed, and that they're going to host in Providence, and people will be upset about that. And I got to stick to the bit there. But and Maine, you're 3rd in pairwise. I still think I don't expect them to even be a 1 seed. They're kind of like Merrimack from last year, where Merrimack was, I think, 3rd in pairwise right around this time, and they had to cling to like the last at-large bid as a 4 seed just to make the tournament. I think Maine's a little bit better than last year's Merrimack team, but I'd still think they're going to be either a 2 or maybe a high 3 seed. But you're a 3rd in pairwise at this time of year. That's essentially a lock. So, and BC and BU are uber talented, and both of those teams could be 1 seeds. Wouldn't be surprised. But again, the fact that they play in the same league and they're going to be playing each other down the stretch, you might have some cannibalization between those two. Like, it might be one of those gets a 1 seed and one that gets a high 2 seed. But we'll see about that. But as far as the for sure's, it's BC, BU, and Maine. Providence, solid, like 75% confident. But that's my 4 teams out of Hockey East. What'd you do with that league?
I did have New Hampshire in.
So as a 5th team, in addition to those 4?
Yep, in addition to those 4. So I do think they're going to get 5. I do expect also UMass to kind of drop off a little bit. So, but just kind of looking at the like just kind of the overall schedules and looking at the team makeup kind of as a whole, I just felt like they'd be able to kind of squeak in there, kind of as a low 3, high 4 seed. They're a little bit, they've kind of like from what I've gathered, at least more of like a one-line team. But they've got Ryan Comey as a freshman who's been just kind of lighting it up. He's a 6th round pick of the Kings, but they've played they earlier in the season, and I guess that's probably clouding my judgment a little bit. But early in the season, they beat Boston, they beat Quinnipiac. Their exhibition games against Maine have at the beginning of the year was tight. They did lose to them here in December. But they've got a lot of good opportunities, I think, to get some solid pairwise points, starting with this weekend against Boston. Where they're at Boston, they've got a couple of games against Boston College, 3 games actually against Boston College. By
2
the end
more
of the
against
year.
Maine. They got
2
a
more
tough
against,
schedule, which is I like that. Like when I'm looking
I
at
like that. Yep.
I potential like fringe teams like Arizona State, for instance.
Exactly.
If I see a team that's got a tougher schedule, that gives them more opportunities to gain in the pairwise. And losses to good teams aren't going to hurt you as bad. Looking at Arizona State, they got cupcakes the rest of the way, essentially. And you got to close to run the table in order for them to move up, because you're just not playing teams that are any good. So I kind of look at, if you got a tougher schedule, I kind of see that as a positive. But again, if you don't win those games, at the end of the day, you're not going to get in. Just that, from my perspective, New Hampshire, I've been watching a little bit of them too. They lost to Army recently, which I didn't think was a very good result. They've had some bad losses in some non-conference, but some good non-conference wins to offset that as well. Quinnipiac and you mentioned not non-conference, but they beat BU early in the season as well. So they're certainly a capable team. I'm just thinking a little early for them, but kind of rooting for them because they haven't really done anything of note for about a decade. So it'd be nice to get them back into the mix, but I think that they're just a little bit on the outside. One of the few teams right on the outside looking in. They're close, but just not quite there for me. But I'm sure I'll be proven wrong.
Yeah, they're averaging about 3.5 goals per game.
Yeah, they would be my first team out of the pairwise, or of the among the at-larges. Like either that, like maybe one of the first. At this point, I guess they're the highest rated pairwise team that I have out of the tournament. I guess you can put it that way. But
sure enough,
they're close.
Yep.
So you had 5 at Hockey East. I had 4.
Yep.
I had 2 in ECAC. You just had 1. So I guess let's move to the 2 final Western leagues. You want to end with NCHC for local angle?
Yeah, let's end with NCHC. Well, okay. I mean, I guess we have Independent too.
We have Independent as well, which we'll touch on. We've touched on them a little bit, but how about we go Big Ten first?
Let's go Big Ten.
I mentioned I've got 4 teams in each of these leagues, so bit of a spoiler alert there. If you can do the math, you can figure out how many independent teams I have included in my field of 16. But for the Big Ten, yeah, I mean, two locks for me, with, again, mentioning the thing about saying that at the beginning of the season. My 2 locks for the Big Ten are Michigan State and Wisconsin. Those are my 2 locks. And then I've got 2 others who are very much question marks. But yeah. I've got Minnesota and Michigan both making it as well.
Yeah, I do too. And I know Michigan wasn't at full strength when they played us, and I know they did get the better of us in terms of, pairwise and everything along those lines. I just don't see it with Michigan, and I think especially with this season for Minnesota, I think they're a little bit more one-dimensional. But I do think they're going to have enough in the gas to get to the national tournament. I don't think they're going to make much noise inside of it, though. As you can tell, I mean, they're fringe teams, and, we might even have a situation here looking at Michigan for a possible Wisconsin rule update.
Wisconsin rule update.
as of right now, they're
That's
sitting
right.
at 8-7. So
Yeah, I didn't. Well, here's the fly in that ointment. Check out who Michigan's got this coming weekend. Yeah, I'll give you a hint. It's rhymes with pone pill. Those are 2 wins there. So that's going to move them up to 10-7-3, and
that's
might
bummer.
put the Wisconsin rule speculation to bed, unfortunately.
Right. Well, at least I got to use the sounder once.
And I'm glad you did. And still hope. I mean, there's still like Notre Dame is 10-10-2, and they're at 21. I mean, it's possible that they could kind of inch up into territory. It's going to say Penn State, but they're never really going to be in danger of being a Wisconsin rule candidate with their non-conference racking up non-conference wins. So yeah, that is a shame, but maybe yeah. I have some Stonehill. We'll get back. I have some Stonehill porn later in the show that I was doing some research on. I want some prop bets from you with Stonehill, so we'll get back to them. But between Minnesota and Michigan, I think I'd rather take Michigan over Minnesota. Actually, I mean, I think they're similar teams in terms of they got kind of shaky goalies. I don't really trust either of their goalies. I mean, don't tell that to St. Cloud with the way that Barchescu or whatever his name is played against the Huskies. But, I never really been a big fan of Close. And if you take out the St. Cloud weekend for Barchescu, he's not been real great for the Wolverines either. So, but between those two, like Michigan has just more skill than Minnesota does. And as you said, like we saw what McGroarty can do at the World Juniors, put on quite a show there. And maybe not even at 100% health still. So, I mean, if they have him back and the rest of their, group of high scoring, talented underclassmen, I would give the edge to them. Whereas like the Gophers have Snuggerud and he's really good. But it's, you see what the effect of losing guys like Faber and Cooley and Nyes. You're going to dip a little bit in quality. And I'm not, it's tough to replace those kind of guys. I'm not sort of blaming them, but I don't, they've kind of been a split team all year. Like they really haven't been, no winning streaks that they've been able to develop. Maybe they'll be able to start one because they got Bobby Morris coming in this weekend, but then it's the rest of the Big Ten schedule for them. And they haven't proven to me yet that they're going to take the bull by the horns here and really make a charge. And even if they make the tournament, it's going to be a lower seed, I think, a 3 or a 4. So interesting. And there's, like we mentioned, like Notre Dame. I mean, the only 2 teams in the conference right now that are above 500 in conference play is Michigan State and Wisconsin. You got Minnesota at 500, and that's with 4 wins out of 12 games. Got a bunch of ties and overtime results in there as well. But everyone else is below 500 other than, Ohio State's cooked. They're winless in conference, but the other, even Penn State and Notre Dame, they're in the mix. Notre Dame, especially because I think Bischel is a solid goalie and he can keep him in a lot of games. So it's another good year for the Big Ten. I don't think they're quite as good as they were last year, but still pretty high quality conference. And that's why because even though I'm not like completely sold on Michigan and Minnesota, I think the overall strength of the conference is going to help them win the day where they're still going to get more than half the teams in their league in. So that's, I guess we're in violent agreement about those 4 teams making it.
I'm not happy with that. And I did Russell, like when I said about the 6 Hockey East team, because I don't know about Michigan. So I was thinking, if UMass, Michigan, which one of those, and it's kind of ironic how I kind of came up with the conclusion, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, but whereas Hockey East could kind of cannibalize himself with that many different teams all vying for it, whereas in Michigan's case, it kind of helps to propel it maybe a little bit up higher with only 4 teams. it's kind of that kind of weird balance of what I ended up with. I think when I looked at like the probability matrix or whatnot,
We don't got the probability matrix up yet, do we?
it's not CHN, it's some other site that I found.
There's
I think
another
it only
probability matrix up. Wow.
yeah, I think it only had like Michigan at like 28% or something
Really?
like that to make the tournament. But
Well, similar to Hockey East. I mean, you got the cannibalization factor here because
yeah,
you got Minnesota and that's weird. So they both, Minnesota and Michigan, these two fringe teams we're talking about, both have non-conference this weekend, and both against terrible teams, like
yeah, just
bottom
gross.
3 teams, Stonehill and Robert Morris. But then after that, it's conference play the rest of the way, and so it's good that you're not really playing a bad team in the bunch in conference play. Even Ohio State is like top half of the pairwise as their last place team. So that gives you the opportunity to get good wins, but you're also playing tough competition. And it's kind of the formula as we've seen from the Gophers for splitting a lot of weekends, and harder for them to make hay in the pairwise doing that. But yeah, it's whenever you have more than half the teams in the league make the NCAA's, that like that fourth team in, if there is going to be a possibility of the Wisconsin rule, it's going to be a team in that situation. So yeah, if it's one of Michigan or Minnesota or one of the other contenders that we've mentioned, we might get some action on that sounder. We'll hope and see.
Yep. Exactly. So ending off NCHC, you got 4 teams, I've got 4 teams.
And just to remind us, I should have listened to the show we did in October, because I'm just going off the top of my head here, but I know that neither of us had St. Cloud. I know that I had Western Michigan, and I know I had Duluth, but that was more like I want to jinx them, so I'm not even gonna.
You're not going to count that as
I'm not even going to count that, really. It is a win because I kind of did jinx them. So, and then I know you had Omaha, which I did not have. We both had North Dakota and Denver. I can't remember if I had both Western Michigan and Duluth, or just I think I might have just had Duluth, and maybe Western was just off the list. But yeah, getting back to the Huskies, we both were not confident at the last weekend of October after the disastrous month of October it ended. We were not feeling it. Spoiler alert, I got the Huskies in the field.
Yep, so do I.
So are we going boring and just taking the top 4 in pairwise with Western as well?
Yeah, I think we are.
So you're cooled on Omaha.
Yeah, it's I just the consistency isn't there. I do like Cozy, but I just don't think they have enough firepower to go ahead and make a solid run. So it's those 4 of the teams that I have, obviously Denver and North Dakota being as far up as they are, is a pretty easy get. But as I said earlier, I was talking about the Huskies. I really like how they're kind of set up right now and how their defense is coming together. And, if we get some of that all 4 line scoring, that's going to be key in all of these stretches here coming up. So, so those are, basically, so that's my field. And that's kind of what I had to wrestle with when I was looking at it. And those, I think, were some of the subs. But I think, it kind of is a testament, too, is how boring, our picks were and how similar they were, is just how the fact that so many of these, or just how college hockey is kind of shaped when it comes to the national tournament and the pairwise and everything. We could look at this around Thanksgiving and get a good sense of, all of the teams and who's good and who's bad and whatnot. So I think it's just kind of a testament to the beast of, this is how, we pick the games and the tournaments, and it's 100% math. So it's a lot easier to predict once you get to this part of the season where you can get those trends to see where they're at. Now, there might be a couple other surprises, looking back to previous years when I was doing some of the research. When it comes to it, I mean, obviously we talked about Colgate, but looking at, the 21-22 season, you had, Cornell, who was right there on the bubble at 15th. By the end of the year, they dropped down to 24th. So, you've got some of these kind of ranges. 18-19 season, Clarkson was 16th. And then they ended up as the first 2 seed. They went up to 5th that year. Cornell went from 17th to 11. Harvard went from 22 to 13th. So there was a lot more of a jump here from that year. That's, Penn State, Western Michigan, Union were the 3 teams that were, on good positions in the bubble that ended up dropping. And then 2017, 2018 was just kind of that crazy year where you had BU, Princeton, Michigan Tech, and Air Force, which I don't want to talk about that. But, you got those years where those 4 were outside of, pairwise. I guess Boston BU was right there on the bubble at 15. But I mean, you had North Dakota, who was 8 at the pairwise at this time in 2018 and didn't end up making the tournament. So, you'll have some of those anomalies. You had, North Dakota, Minnesota, and Western Michigan at that time, 8, 9, and 10, took up those spots. So 8, 9, and 10 at this point in 2018 that ended up dropping out of the tournament by virtue of just dropping pairwise points and upsets in the conferences.
I think I remember it was Alaska Fairbanks. It was 2010. I believe it's the only NCAA tournament they've made. And
I should say that was the 0.0001 year.
Oh, yeah.
And
don't remind me.
Just for Dan Jacobson, because we've been ragging on Duluth and they deserve to be ragged on. I guess we should.
Yes, they do deserve.
But I still won't talk about Air Force. If Bob won't give us an answer, I shouldn't have to answer for it. So I'm sorry, Alaska.
Yeah, the 09-10 Alaska Nanooks. I'd like to know exactly where they were, because I know that they have like a distinction of being the latest team to be in the 20s in pairwise to make an at-large run, because they were in the 20s in February of 2010. They went on a unbeaten streak for like the month of February, getting into early March, and they were able to sneak into the tournament. And that one it's just an anomaly, because if you're that buried in that late in the season, typically not going to be able to make it back. But you have stories like that, outlier stories, that a couple that you'd mentioned too, where teams either drop from pretty solid position or just rise out of nowhere. It tends to take fluky things like winning out of like your regular season. And that's it. Like, they didn't make it as the automatic qualifier. They made it as an at-large, which again is what makes it unique. So, I mean, yeah, there's teams like, is there a team that we haven't mentioned yet, even in our discussion of possible teams and fringe teams, like of the teams that we haven't even mentioned here? Is there like Colorado College at 19? Like, are they a legit contender? We haven't mentioned Northeastern sitting there at 24. Like, they've had kind of a rough first half of the year, but they got some big wins lately against BC, and they took Quinnipiac to overtime. Like, Dartmouth's having a weird effing season at 4-4-6.
They'll tie their way into a pairwise.
They're third in ECAC by pairwise, Dartmouth. So it's a weird year, and something weird could happen like that. So, yeah.
Well, and then, possible. I know we talked quite a bit about it, but Arizona State as an independent.
Yeah, let's get to them, because.
So, I mean, so neither of us have them in the tournament.
No, and I had them in October. I picked them.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at the schedule, and I'm kind of thinking it's so home heavy. My whole thing was let's put a pin in this, because last year the whole thing with Alaska having such a chance to make the NCAAs, I think was largely, this didn't really go reported. I think it was largely on the heels of them playing such a road heavy schedule. The way that the pairwise is weighted with road games counting as 120% of a win rather than home games, which are 80% of wins. So you're almost penalized for winning home games, and you're incentivized. You get a bonus for winning road games. And I was just looking at Arizona's. I was looking at Arizona's or Alaska's schedule last year. They didn't have a ton of like great wins. Like they won at Notre Dame, but Notre Dame didn't make the tournament. They won at Denver. I think that was like the only win they had against an actual NCAA tournament qualifier. So they had a couple of wins, decent wins here and there. But most of their wins were against the Lindenwoods and the Anchorages and the other independents. And so I was just kind of baffled as to far as why they were as high as they were. And I think it was in large part because they played, I think it was 20 road games versus 14 home games. Whereas with Arizona State this year, you kind of got the opposite of that, where they're playing such a home heavy schedule. And as I mentioned, you only get 80% of a home win in terms of pairwise. So I figured, I had the hunch, and because a lot of their schedule is, again, like Alaska, it's heavy on, especially in the second half, the independents, and those type of teams aren't very good. And so I was curious as to, I bet this team's going to rack up a lot of wins, but because they're playing them mostly at home and they're mostly not quality teams, that's not going to be enough for them to win a pairwise. And I said, circle the dates against Denver and Providence, because those are the two best teams that they play on the schedule. If they can win a game out of both of those teams, they might be in decent position. Well, they won a game against each of those teams, but they were both in overtime. So again, that's further cutting into the pairwise because overtime wins get you 60% of 80%. Again, if you don't follow me, I understand. But just to say that an overtime win is not as valuable as a full regulation win. And they've got 16 wins. They're 16, 3-5. But yet 5 of those are in overtime. 5 of those 16 wins are in overtime. And they've got some weird results. Like mentioned Dartmouth. 2 ties against Dartmouth at home. Just very strange. Big one for them. They had to go to overtime to beat Stonehill. This is kind of wild. Their overtime win against Stonehill, if they would have won that in regulation, that's costing them 1 spot in the pairwise right now. You change the overtime win to a regulation win, they're up to 15. It could be if they remain right on the fringe here, it could be that an overtime win is what's going to screw them. But so just looking at the remainder of the schedule, they got Cornell this weekend. Now Cornell is 21st in pairwise. And then they have Alaska 4 times. But Cornell, I believe Alaska is below them below Cornell in pairwise now. Just double checking. Yeah, Alaska's at 22, Cornell's at 20. Actually, this might not be. Yeah, Cornell at 20, Alaska at 22. That's the highest pairwise team they have remaining. I just don't see them being able to move up unless they really kind of close to run the table. They have 14 games left. I mean, I would assume if they go 30-3 and whatever amount of ties, that they're probably going to make the tournament. But I could definitely see them have 25 wins and be 17th in pairwise and out. Yeah. And I kind of see that's what's going to happen. And so now, not only am I going to predict that they're not going to make the tournament, but I think we're going to get some quality journalism. And you remember the Lowell Sun article?
Lowell Sun Sports, yep. Well,
saying about why do we play this pair? Why is this pairwise here when we had so many wins? We're going to have some great either Twitter rants or maybe there's a student newspaper out there. Someone at the end of the year is going to say, this is a travesty. Arizona State won 20X games, whatever, 24, 25 wins. And Michigan won 16 or whatever it is. And they're in the tournament and we're not. And it's unfair. And So like me predicting that Providence is going to make the tournament as a 4 seed and host, and people are going to be sore about that, I'm also going to predict that Arizona State will not make the field, and we're going to have some outraged, pairwise illiterate Arizona State fans who are going to call foul on the whole system. So that's my prediction.
You already have their Twitter account who is asking or has put in their resume they're building the resume that they're 11th, and they have currently the longest undefeated streak in program history. Okay. Tied for number 1 with the fewest losses, only 3. And second.
They gotta. I'm sure they've got to be up there with. Yeah, they got to be up there in terms of. Are they leading the league in wins? Wisconsin's got 18.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're on the second most wins in NCAA with 16. Again, 5 of those in overtime.
And that, just it's so funny to me that, obviously, and they got dragged on Twitter, and even I posted the meme of DW looking at that tweet like a sign that says, that doesn't apply because I can't read. And, where I said that is the pairwise, because obviously it doesn't take into effect any type of resumes of look at all of our accomplishments that aren't, hey, this is who you've beaten, here's who you lost to, and here's who those teams have lost to and beaten, so it's just this weird thing. At least when Bowling Green had that tweet, back in the COVID year, pairwise was kind of thrown out the window where you could make an actual
you had
resume.
to convince a committee there. Yeah.
So it didn't work that time, so I don't know why they thought that it would work here this time for this one, but anyway, 100% we're gonna get that about crying foul, and then they're gonna be in the NCHC next year, and they're firmly gonna finish 6th.
All right. Well, I'm gonna write that down. It is January 8th, 2024, and you got 6th place in the 24-25 season.
Yep, 6th place, Arizona State.
Okay, writing that down, putting that in my time vault, and we will circle back on that one. Yeah, it's one of those because you're a new program and it's not a natural hockey market, you've really got to pump up the tires of the credibility, because this is a serial problem for this program. Because this started when you mentioned, was it Dan Jacobson that had pointed out that they were bragging about their first NCAA tournament win being in a midseason tournament. And that it kind of sounded like they're making it seem like it was an NCAA tournament win. Mm-hmm. Like they won a national title, but it was like a midseason tournament. I texted you the picture. I was unaware that they have they've risen banners for their NCAA tournament appearance in 2019, which they played that year. They lost to Quinnipiac in the tournament that year. They made it as an at-large that year. But next to that, there was a banner for them making the NCAA tournament in 2020 as well, which there was no tournament.
There was no year. NCAA tournament.
They were inside the pairwise gate at the time that COVID killed that year. I'm not quite 100% sure that that's like a given that they would have made the tournament, because he still had postseason tournaments needing to shake out. So it's not even certain. Like CHN gives them a check mark in their team history for making the tournament that year. But CHN's app has been so wrong. I don't know why we're using them as some sort of authority on this matter. As I mentioned to you, I'm a little embarrassed St. Cloud still feels compelled to raise banners, or at least add to banners about their NCAA tournament appearances, because I think they've risen the bar a little higher. This, though, raising a banner for a tournament that never existed, that's a new one. And you tell on yourself when you have to sort of be creative and kind of fudge the facts a little bit to sort of boost up your reputation. It's cute, which is what I'll say. And I wouldn't be shocked now that they've won this Desert Hockey Classic finally, and they won the brand new Adirondack Holiday Tournament last weekend in Lake Placid, winning that tournament in the shootout. You always love those. We got to expect them to be like back-to-back NCAA tournament champions. Yep, Arizona State. Back-to-back weekends, 2 NCAA titles in men's ice hockey. So we got to expect that, I guess. They're setting their bar very, very high, as we've seen. So, yeah, there's going to be some saltiness in Tempe come March 20th or so. I'm predicting that.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me also about that tweet is you could have that information as good for pumping up your program and, getting people excited and everything like that. But I mean, all you had to do was just not include building a resume. Because that's not how any of this works. So you could just have it as here's some facts like, hey, we're 11th in the polls.
If you want to cherry pick facts and stats and numbers to make yourself look as good as possible, great. But that I can cherry pick negative stats to say how your resume, quote unquote, isn't as great. Like their best regulation win this year in terms of pairwise is a 2-0 win at CC. They haven't beaten a team above them in pairwise in a regulation win all year. So they just, the schedule, the strength of their wins is good. If they would have beaten Stonehill in regulation, like everybody else has done this year, or if they hadn't gone to, overtime twice against Miami, or not, if they could have beaten Dartmouth, these are the things that are holding them back. It's 16-3-5 is a gaudy record, and I'm someone that I am not a pairwise is the best ever, and it's pairwise or death. I've said on here many times some weaselly arguments about how we can maybe tweak the system a little bit, but this is what the pairwise generally is there for, because if you have a team with this kind of record, it's all about the opponents that you're playing. You could play a season when you're playing 20 games against Stonehill and you go 20-0. Do you really think that you should make the tournament? This is what the computers are here for. So while I'm not the biggest pairwise defender, this is the kind of situation where this is why we have it. So it's interesting, and I anticipate the fun and passionate arguments that are forthcoming.
And just as we kind of put a bow on this, one thing that I struck out as I was going through some of those previous years, is, kind of looking at the pairwise, how many teams in there, that you get to the flirting with the bubble had, 6, 7, 8 losses so far on the schedule. You really you don't have that many. I mean, you've got a number of teams, like 13 or so teams that have less than 5 losses, 5 or less losses on the season so far. And I know we just talked about Arizona State. We could put an asterisk on those ones, but I mean, even when you get like to St. Cloud, sitting at 11-5-2, and obviously we're bolstered a little bit as well by 2 of those losses being in that overtime. So, but I mean, and some of those surprises with New Hampshire and Providence, Maine kind of sneaking up as well. But you just have a lot, and we talked about kind of the weirdness with Cornell and Dartmouth. A little bit of the Ivies have something to do with that as well, not playing a lot, but a lot of ties when it comes to that. Just kind of struck me as a little bit bizarre, a little bit odd that you have so many teams that have so few losses at this point in the season.
I remember, I think in October I mentioned I predicted there'd be a 1 seed this year, meaning one of the top 4 in pairwise that would have double-digit losses. because it seemed like we were going towards, we were talking parity, lots of teams, New Hampshire's coming out of nowhere and winning games. And so I kind of figured this is going to be one of those years where you're going to have like a top team have double-digit losses. But as you're saying, might be unlikely this year based on the kinds of records that we're seeing this year. So yeah, that is a good point.
So we're at 2 hours on the podcast. We've got the women's. We got some questions. Where do you want to go with that? Do you want to predict the women's field?
Sure.
I mean, I hate to do it a disservice and do it quickly, but at the same time, I know this is getting a little bit long, and it's a lot less interesting when just kind of you look at the women's.
It's
side
less,
of it.
Less guessing. Or I mean, there's guessing in terms of the other auto bid only leagues, because there's just no real clear candidate, obviously, because they're all outside the pairwise gate right now. But in terms of like ECAC versus WCHA, I think that's always worth dissecting. And so let's go through it.
Do you just want to go ahead and
do the auto bid leagues first?
The auto bids?
Yeah.
Sure.
So CHA, I'm sticking with Mercyhurst. Stupidly, I think Penn State is better in terms of pairwise and record and all that. But and I think you had Penn State in October. Are you sticking with Penn State?
Yep, I am.
Okay, and I'll stick stubbornly with Mercyhurst. Newha, I think I had St. Anselm in October. You had LIU, who was the winner last year. I've watched actually some LIU and St. Anselm, and I do think LIU is a little bit better. So I'm going to change it to LIU.
I'm sticking with LIU.
Hockey East, I think we both had Northeastern. I know I had Northeastern coming out of Hockey East. I'm changing that one up.
Yeah, I am too.
I hope we don't
Northeastern
have the same one.
just plummeted. Maybe not plummeted, but they definitely dropped off.
The whole league is kind of
nearly as good.
Yeah, the whole league's kind of mid, sub mid actually. But there's a lot of similar types of teams there. There's a couple of, but like there's not a ton that differentiates like Northeastern from Vermont, from BC, or from UConn, who is my pick.
That's my pick too.
God, I wanted us to have some differences here. But they just played the Gophers this past weekend. They got swept. UConn did, but I thought they played somewhat okay. I mean, they hung in there as much as they can. We've got the Tia Chan, the Chinese Olympian who was coached by Adulski, and they've got she's been playing the majority of the games, but got this other goalie too that's been pretty solid for them as well. So of the teams in a not great league, again, we've kind of mentioned the other contenders there. I was going to go with UConn mostly for like the Huskies because I like other Huskies to make the tournament, and Northeastern seems to be the Huskies in that league that are sort of on the decline. So I'm going with the Huskies that are on the rise. So,
I went with them, maybe a little bit more because I couldn't bring myself to pick BC. I don't care for BC in really anything. And maybe it's Doug Flutie related, maybe it's not, but that's kind of where I ended up.
Anti-Catholic bias. He's hate those Catholics.
So it's it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, you know what? Can I get that kind of a fun story? I'll pick them.
Well, we agree there. So now I guess it's the big question. And again, I kind of look at it as far as how many teams per league, and then I sort of decide who my teams are. Do we do 4-4, or do we got 5-3 out of the ECAC and WCHA?
I got 5-3.
Same here.
Who's the 5?
WCHA.
I do not have it as WCHA.
Really? Yeah. You've got 5 ECAC teams.
I do.
Whoa. Okay. This is interesting now. So are you, I'm going to try to guess.
Okay.
You're down on the Gophers So you're going to say it's going to, and I don't think you're going to knock off St. Cloud. So I'm going to say you picked Ohio State, Wisconsin, and St. Cloud out of the WCHA.
Hold on a second. Did I miscount? Nope, just kidding. I didn't miscount. 4-4. I did miscount.
You did miscount. I was going to say, like, this is going to be interesting.
For some reason, I had Ohio State written down under ECAC.
Okay, that makes more sense. So
my bad.
So it's going to be that I went with Duluth. You did not go with Duluth.
I did not go with Duluth. Nope.
And so we both obviously have Ohio State, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and St. Cloud.
Yep, correct.
So I have Duluth as a 5th team from WCHA. For ECAC, so you have 4 teams. I'm sure we both have Clarkson, Colgate, and Quinnipiac.
Yep.
So your 4th team out of ECAC, I'm going to say you went with Cornell?
Correct.
Yeah, that was the big one. Like, do I slot?
That's where it all kind of hinders on. And I could see that. I could see with Duluth. I think those are. I just don't think Duluth is trending the right way.
They're not. Now. Yeah, they're certainly not. But I feel like they're going to be able to get some splits against the top 4 WCHA teams. Yeah. Whereas I feel like the ECAC is more top heavy. And so it was a big weekend. We kind of mentioned in passing with Quinnipiac beating and tying Duluth in Quinnipiac this past weekend. And that tie was a 2-0 comeback. Or they came back from a 2-0 deficit in the 3rd period to tie that game. Like if Duluth wins that game on Saturday, I'm wondering if that makes your decision different. Like if you say that Duluth possibly makes the tournament based on that, because that did hurt them in the pairwise. But yeah, between like especially seeing St. Cloud and Duluth play very similarly matched teams, but I feel like St. Cloud's just better than them, and so. But I just feel like they were able to get a win against Wisconsin earlier in the season. I feel like they're going to be able to get a couple of splits against those teams in the second half, enough more so than some of these other fringe ECAC teams like Cornell.
Sure.
But I like what Quinnipiac did. I think that was a really good weekend for them. So that's why I'm confident as my 3rd team, whereas Clarkson and Colgate are pretty solid. Clarkson losing their first game of the year, should mention, over the past weekend. And Cornell's a solid team too. I think Yale's not bad. I mean, ECAC is still solid. I just think that top to bottom, WCHA is a little bit better, which is why I'm going the 5-3 rather than 4-4.
Yep. And I think that's the case too. Also, kind of what I noticed about that game, that 2-1 victory for Quinnipiac. Minnesota Duluth came out with the first goal, Clara Van Wieren. But just how heavily outshot the Bulldogs outshot the Bobcats, ended with 37-15. So, letting 2 goals on 15 shots is very not Minnesota Duluth like. We didn't see a lot of those games with Maddie Rooney in that.
Right.
So, one other thing that's in Duluth's favor, see, now I'm talking myself back into Duluth, but another thing in their favor is they don't have nearly the gauntlet St. Cloud State does when it comes towards the schedule towards the end of the season. Bemidji State, then at Ohio State, Wisconsin, but then they go with Minnesota State, St. Thomas, and then they end with St. Cloud, Minnesota. So they don't have, kind of at least, I guess I've unofficially considered 3 of the top 4 teams in the nation as a gauntlet. And they don't have that.
See, I like that from St. Cloud's perspective, that they play them all in a row.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it keeps their focus. Like, you play a Bemidji in between, that's trap game written all over it. Whereas you just keep the Ohio State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Duluth, you just knock them all out, and it's kind of like what the end of the first half played out. Whereas like they're playing Minnesota and Duluth and Ohio State sort of back to back at the end of the first half, and I think they play their best hockey as a result of needing to have that razor focus for like a solid 2 weeks or whatever it was. So,
Yep.
so I'd rather do it that way. I don't like it that they're all on the road for that second month of it. Like split up the home and road a little bit more through evenly throughout the year. That's one thing I don't like about it, but
no, I gotcha. So, really hope St. Cloud though does end up making it to the to the year-end tournament, the final face-off. So, and also there'll be a bar that I did pledge money towards, and I do support. And the owner of the bar did officiate my wedding, called A Bar of Their Own, which is opening up in Minneapolis. That is specializing in women's sports. That they did announce that they are opening up on March 1st. So, maybe a nice pregame area before you go to that final face-off. So
there you go.
Hopefully St. Cloud's there and I can go.
There you go.
It's basically what I'm hoping for. So let's go through some questions.
Can I do some Stonehill porn first? Because I had some prop bets for you.
Prop bets?
Stonehill related prop bets.
Oh, geez, gross. Okay.
First of all, we mentioned they're playing Michigan this weekend. Michigan played host to Lindenwood earlier in the season, and those games were not close. 9-1 and 10-1. 19 goals combined. So I'm going to set it at 19.5. Total goals for Michigan this weekend against Stonehill.
Oh, wow. 19.5. I'm going to go, Stonehill's so bad.
I'm getting to that.
Such a high bar. I'm going to go under.
Okay, I'll go over.
But I think it's going to be like
it might be a mercy, like just out of mercy.
8 to rip games. And they
could be 8 to rip after 2 periods, and then they'll be like, we're just going to play our scrubs. Like McGrory's not playing, and
we're just going to chip and chase, and not even chase, just gain the red and dump it. So, I will say under, but it'll be very close. The highest score that we've seen this season, I believe, from a score differential point, would be the exhibition game between Arizona State.
Are we counting that?
Arizona State versus Arizona.
We know Arizona State's counting that. Like I'm surprised that wasn't in their resume.
It wasn't. Why not put it in their resume? I'm going to count it because that was 16-0.
Hey, take it easy on my Wildcats. Tucson here, we love our cats. Bear down.
So, I mean, I could also see a 16-0 game. Like, just, I think the difference.
But see, that's like a potential rivalry thing going on there between those two schools. Where there's really, there's no rivalry between Michigan and Stonehill.
Is there a potential rivalry in hockey between those two?
Well,
schools?
not between hockey, but those two schools are their biggest rival for everything. So there'd be more of a incentive for them to just be like, we're going to kick your ass by 20. Whereas like from Michigan's perspective, it's almost like, again, I think the only reason they don't exceed 19.5 is because it was like, we don't want to we'll take it easy on you. Like
McGrory probably is going to have, 16 points on the weekend just to try to get his Hobie stats up. Or
when you're like, if they were just playing this in the regular course of the season, maybe they would like rest some of those guys, but because they've played they've gone like a month without playing, obviously the World Juniors guys have action, but I would expect them to play because they're going to want to get the rust off. So I don't think these are going to be terribly close, but we shall see. So Stonehill 0-19 on the season. Only one, I guess, of those needs to have an asterisk, that Arizona State overtime loss. So they do have some pairwise points because of that, which is probably nice because I know this pairwise kind of gets screwed up if a team is like winless. So I'm glad that they were able to salvage an overtime result. And also not included in that 0-19 is a loss to something called Anna Maria, which is what I gathered was a D3 team. That was at home. That was at Stonehill's home rink, losing to a D3 program that I had never heard of. That sounds like a ship in some naval battle. And they have 2 games later this year, also against D3 opponents. These I've actually heard of these colleges, St. Anselm and Assumption. Those are also
just
at
because
Stonehill.
we follow women's hockey as well.
They're also in the new with Stonehill. So I'm gonna go on a limb. They will definitely not win any game against any D1 team. I'm even gonna say if they've lost to Anna Maria, they'll lose those 2 other D3 games as well.
They're rivalry games.
I mean, I was concerned if they're going to run the table. My biggest threat was this past weekend when they played at Robert Morris, who is next to last in pairwise. Robert Morris beat them 8-1 and 7-3. I mean, they outscored them by 11 total goals, and Robert Morris is horrendous. So Stonehill, I'm fascinated by this team. And are you willing to say they're going to get on the board against any of these teams? I mean, other than Michigan, they got 6 games against Long Island. They got 4 games against Lindenwood. They got Anchorage on the schedule. They've got, not only are they winless, but they're going to play at the end of the year. It's going to be one of the easiest schedules in college hockey. This is barely a D3 team. Are you going to stake out their claim and say Stonehill is going to get a win this season?
No.
And I'll even count overtime.
No. I don't know.
It seems very difficult, but
hockey
is weird, man.
This team is so bad.
It is so bad. It needs to be seen. I've watched them a little bit here and there, and it's weird. Like I said, hockey's weird. Like they had a 3-2 loss at Merrimack, and they weren't terrible in that game. And so it's like I can see some teams sort of taking them lightly, like Arizona State did. But that's almost like where the schedule that they have, where it is all cupcakes after Michigan. Those teams, they're not going to be like looking past them. They're going to be like, oh, we can get fat in these games. It's almost going to be worse for Stonehill's chances. So, all right. So we're both on the record. They're going to run the table here. You're even with those D3 games, because I'll count them too. I think that they're going to lose those games as well. But here's the other one I got for you. So currently they are at, for their pairwise points, the formula that it spits out, they're at 0.3384, which is last in college hockey, shockingly. Right now, it is the lowest in all of college hockey history, dating back to 2002-2003, which is the first season that the pairwise was fully implemented for the 16-team field. And currently, they're like well below the current low. The current lowest pairwise percentage was 0.3563. That was in 2004-2005. Do you want to guess the team that was the worst ever season in pairwise in the last 20 years?
2004, 2005.
Yes. And this program was dead last in pairwise like 6 or 7 times in the last 20 years. This was not just a one-off for them.
Okay. I'm gonna go with. Got to remember the Tuck Cliff now. If we're going back, right? I'm gonna go with Bentley.
Incorrect. I'll give you one other guess, and I'll give you a hint. St. Cloud is under 500 all time against this team.
Oh, shut up. Are you kidding me? God, no way. It's not the Bees, is it? Is it the Bees?
It's the Fighting Bees.
God. Oxymoron University.
Hurricane International. And they got that all-time low pairwise in a season where they won 4 games. There were 4-23-4. So I bet you even Stonehill could win a couple of these and still break the record. That's just how bad it is. Just to put that in perspective a little bit, the gap from them to 63, the next team, that's the same gap that separates 1 versus 17 in the pairwise. Or if you want to go the other way around, it's the same gap that separates 63 to 36 So it's a monumental gap between them and the next worst team. So this is a historically bad team, and it's almost intriguing just to watch it because it's don't see it. This is a once in a generation. So
like this is like the Washington Generals, but like
and it's weird too. I know CHN has been throwing shade with them because they're like no one like talks to them. No one from Stonehill like talks to. They don't grant interviews. It's weird because it seems like from the women's side they've been putting forth a decent effort. They've been in that Newha for 3 or 4 years, and they're not good, but they're not like this like god awful. But they apparently just don't throw any resources at the men's team. And like last year, they barely played 5 or 6 games for the D1 teams, and don't tell that to UConn or whoever it was that salty about them those games not counting in the pairwise. But they just don't really even seem to be putting forth even the minimum sort of effort. So just I wanted to throw that out there because they've been a team that's been pretty phenomenal in the worst possible way, and just see if they can complete the task here and run the complete table with winless season. That would be something to admire.
Wow, that's
all the Stonehill porn I got.
Yeah, I think there was a time when I welcomed Stonehill to college hockey. I take that back. Actually, can I rescind my welcome? Like, if you're not even going to try, what's the point? Because that's got to be what it's at right now. You have to be actively not trying to be this absolutely abysmal.
Yeah, I don't know what your plan is,
or what the game plan was, unless it was maybe like a Title IX add-on. It was like we added some women's programs, so we have to throw in a D1 men's program. Might have went.
I think Long Island went D1 in all their sports. This could have been another one of their situations. Just decided, let's just move everything up and not even worry about actually fielding a legitimate team. I'm not sure.
Whereas you look at St. Thomas, who moved everything up, and obviously, I mean, the hockey team here has a chance to win the McNaughton Cup.
Right. Or even like Long Island, a better example, because they're in their same league in the women's side, and they're trying to make a go at it in the independents for the men's side. They've again not been great, not been good even, but they're they put up an effort. They're making a go at it, but doesn't seem like there's the same amount of attempt from Stonehill. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. When they become relevant, that's going to be the shocker of all shockers.
Yeah. St. Thomas basketball team almost had a close matchup with Marquette actually not too long ago. So, and is one of the favorites in the Summit right now, which I think there's also some kind of 4-year ban on them, like, because I think it's on all sports, so
that's right.
But so can you imagine, making the dance? Got St. Thomas makes it to the dance, but isn't eligible, and that's the only reason, and the Gophers can't anyway. Anyway, find that funny. Let's hop over to questions then. How happy do you think Motzko is to have a strong defensive first team this year? That's from Alex. That references to an early quote when he was actually talking about, kind of the shrinking of the rink. And then, Bob just kind of threw in that, he's looking forward to having a strong defensive team this year. And I don't know. They give up a lot of goals for being a strong defensive team. And I've never heard that phrase ever out of Motzko's mouth that he likes to slow it down. It's got to
be code. That's Motzko ease for something else that doesn't mean that explicitly. I don't know where he's getting at, but that's a good one.
Dan Jacobson, how incredible would it be for Minnesota to miss the tournament? I agree. It would be pretty great. I don't see it happening, as we talked about, but
It'd be incredible from sort of awe-inspiring, like surprise, but it wouldn't be incredible from the like realistic side of things. It's very credible.
It's very credible
that they could miss the tournament.
I really hope they get Wisconsin ruled, like somehow. Like if we can find if Minnesota gets Wisconsin ruled, would be
if they can maybe lose one of these Bobby Moe games, that'll drop them, but it's not going to sink them like 10 spots. So just split this series, then we might have a shot. Then I think they kind of need to lose one of these games against Bobby Moe, I think.
Which, I mean, the way that they've been giving up goals lately, it is kind of
Robert Morris is on a high after their sweep of Stonehill. So they actually hopped. I was assuming they were still the second to worst team, Robert Morris, but they actually hopped Ferris F and State. We're playing all of our favorite
hits.
First round face plants here with them. God. We just need an Air Force reference now.
Yeah, one loss to Robert Morris gets him down to the 15-16 range.
Okay, so, that's right there on the bubble.
Yeah. So, way to go, Big Ten scheduling, by the way. Like I guess this is kind of their tune-up before conference play hits. Like you said, it's Michigan against Stonehill. You've got Minnesota against Robert Morris. Like any other barn burners there in Big Ten coming up this weekend?
No, I missed one. This is the best pairwise matchup of the three that we've mentioned in Big Ten. Wisconsin hosting Lindenwood.
Yep. Okay, that's what it is. So there we go. Way to go, Barry Alvarez. Is this what you've dreamed of? Christine had a couple questions. Will we see Posh and Bassey splitting time weekends? And I suppose, we didn't talk about this. The fact
Good
that
question.
Posh was started in the what day was that?
He had the second Omaha game, and then he played the second Bemidji game.
Yes. Yeah.
And I guess the mop-up work he had in Mankato prior to that. That's his 3 appearances.
The second Bemidji game, which was a Sunday game. I tried to get that in my head. Okay.
Yeah. That's what threw me off.
Well, his first official start, was more due to, it sounded like an illness or a tweaking.
Little minor injury, which might still be lingering for Bassey. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So that very well could be the case where they're going to go ahead. I don't know if that's going to happen at Denver. It's not like Denver has the most raucous crowd, but especially
shots fired.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially like when I was there, they definitely didn't have a raucous crowd. I think maybe also St. Cloud's not nearly the draw that like in North Dakota is. So I can see where they can get up for that, or a CC for a rivalry. But still, I mean, that's it's still a tough place to play. The lights are so dark there. I don't see it happening, but unless if there's still an issue of, Bassey has got a little bit of a tweak, then why not throw him out there? I was nervous when Farringer played his debut up at North Dakota and was able to shut him out there at the Ralph when Mike Lee couldn't. So,
yeah, I guess I haven't really thought if there is going to be any sort of. I don't expect there to be a Bassey Caster type of rotation that we saw last year. It might just depend on Bassey's health and the fact that we haven't really heard anything on that front. I might have missed some, Mick Hatton reportage on that front, but that might dictate Posh's playing time. That and the fact that he's looked pretty good in his limited action, and so I wouldn't be opposed to it. I guess I continue to be surprised. Like I was surprised when I saw Posh play against Bemidji, and if we see that again this weekend, I might take that as Bassey just must not be 100%. But I guess it's going to be a development that I'm going to be interested to see how it shakes out, because back in October, we were all for having the other goalie see some action. But then as the season progressed, it just became more likely that it's going to be Bassey's job almost 100% of the time. And now there's a wrench in that plan. So I don't have any insight as far as what the plan is, if there is a plan, but I'm kind of just assuming Bassey until I see otherwise. And until I see Posh really kind of crap the bed, I'm all for having him get some action as well, because I've been impressed with him so far.
I agree. It might be too early. Any thoughts about the structuring of regionals for the NCAA this year? Will all the Minnesota teams be playing in South Dakota? So kind of a reference to last year, where you had 3 Minnesota teams play in the Grand Forks Regional. Just kind of looking at who we predicted, do we both only have 2 Minnesota teams in the tournament?
Well, I've got 3 with Mankato coming out of the CCHA as my
right.
sort of auto bid out of the CCHA. But yeah, Minnesota and St. Cloud, that's the only 2 you have. I would assume if North Dakota's making it, they're going to go to Sioux Falls.
Probably.
That's a natural pick there. Providence, that's natural for them to be in Providence. And that's right by Boston too. So if you have one of these BU or BC teams get a 1 seed, potential that they could be. But see, if Providence is the 1 seed though, then they can't play another Hockey East team in the first round. So yeah, it could all shake out differently based on the conference matchups of the seedings. The other Eastern Regionals in Springfield, Mass. So, yeah, which is like an hour and a half drive from Boston. So you could have one of the Boston teams kind of play semi-host there. I mean, I guess UMass has a lot to play for this year, mentioning them as a fringe team. That's actually a co-hosted regional with them and AIC. Another drop of the bees here on the podcast. But
can we ban them? Can we just ban AIC talk?
I guess I never thought about this because they are co-hosts. Like AIC's not having a bad year in hockey or in Atlantic hockey. And we're mentioning UMass is right there on the bubble. Like if both of them qualify for the tournament, like if AIC wins Atlantic hockey and UMass gets in from Hockey East, they would both automatically go to that regional, I would assume. But then what? That's a possibility that they could both be they could both be 4 seeds. Then what happens? Someone is getting. I want to have that scenario play out, because then you're going to have a host of a regional not be at their facility that they hosted at, because they're going to have to split them up. They couldn't do that. So yeah. But as far as like where teams would go, I'm imagining, like I said, North Dakota and Sioux Falls, and like if it's North Dakota as a 2 seed and the Gophers as a 3 seed, that's what's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
it doesn't matter if the seedings, like if it's the 9th overall seed and the 5th overall seed, it's still going to be Gophers.
If you got that matchup, you take it.
You're going to take
100%. and then yeah, you sold out Denny Sanford right there.
And then if St. Cloud's the 4 seed, then if they're a 4 seed, they're probably going to that regional too.
Yep.
Against whoever would be the 1 seed, maybe Denver. It'd be easier maybe if UND is the 1 seed. UND's 1, Gophers are 4. So that's that first round matchup. Maybe then you have, I don't know, Denver's at 8. I mean, certainly they can move up to number 1, but sometimes it doesn't work out that easily, where you have two Western and 2 Eastern number 1 seeds. Because right now you've got 3. Yeah, you got BU, BC, and Maine all at 1 seeds, and then Wisconsin. Forgot about them.
Oh,
you could have Wisconsin in either Sioux Falls or Maryland Heights.
Yep.
So I bet you're not going to have 3 Hockey East teams be number 1 seeds in the tournament. That's going to shake out. I would be surprised if there's 2 in the 1 seed band out of that league. I bet you Quinnipiac's going to be a 1 seed. I bet either BC or BU is going to be a 1 seed. probably BU. I'll go with UND. And yeah, I mean, Wisconsin seems to be on a roll. So yeah, that's what I'll say is my 1 seeds. And then you can play. Then yeah, Wisconsin would be in Maryland Heights. I don't know. This is all way too early speculation, but you can see kind of
that's
some
what
of
we
the
do
things.
here.
Some of the
we
things.
We predicted the field in October. Of course we have.
It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to speculate.
Mm-hmm. So, and then will the Herb get new seats ever? Teresa actually made this point a couple of games ago, and I guess I don't know what game, but like the bench seatings where the butt is like carved out, like in the family sections. Just stop with that.
Kind of how the Arizona State student section is too. They've kind of got the pre-molded, the pre-butted seats.
Yeah.
And it's just no backing. It's just the bench.
And that's fine.
Very uncomfortable.
It's just the bench and that, but like the pre-mold of the butt, like isn't needed.
It's biased against, it's like having a stereotypical butt size.
Yeah.
And it's like some butts are bigger, man. Like some are smaller, some are big, and butts are all in different shapes and sizes.
So, I don't know. But yeah, I felt like those seats they're so bad. If we had the money tree, I would donate so we can get we already fixed the sound system kind of.
There's so much. Like we're at a point where we're coming up on 35 years being in the Herb. And we desperately need the ice cooling refrigerant system, whatever. But so maybe like your only hope is really to begging the state government to give them some money here. I mean, you're like less than 10 years away from like, can we just get like the Band-Aid of getting the ice sheet taken care of? Have that last like 10 years, and then in 10 years just ask for a whole new building. Like there's so much that you need to have upgrades on. Just do the whole thing. Just give us a whole new building, and please and thank you, because that way we'll take care of all the fat ice, we'll take care of the acoustics, we'll take care of the butts, pre-molded butts in the bench seats. We'll take care of all that. But it's to this point, you're just putting lipstick on a pig if you're just doing one project at a time. Just we'll start over. Yeah, I love the building, but let's start over. If we're gonna beg for money, just beg for it all. We're still waiting on phase 2, so just translate that into phase 3, and it's a new Herb,
and it's just a new building.
Q lot. Start building there.
Just start a Q lot. I don't know.
It's prime waterfront property.
Yeah, right. And then kind of one last one from Eric Zabora, who had kind of an interesting one. And his was like, what songs do you associate with Husky hockey? And there were a couple of them that kind of popped into my head, and a lot of others were kind of mentioned. And some of them I'm really upset that I didn't think of. But the ones that I picked out right off the top of my head were Back in the Saddle by Aerosmith.
That is a good one. Yeah.
And Tainted Love, which they always used to play that, and then the whole dog pound would sing along to it, and they stopped doing it. Yeah. I want to say, I don't know, 08, 09-ish. Like I was still in college when they stopped doing it, and I remember being a little bit ticked off, or I was still regularly at least going to the games.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I remember that, but it has been a while. That when he said that, I'm like, really? I don't remember that one, but. Yeah, Back in Saddles, that's like what I hate that song.
I'm back in the saddle again.
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with it.
I got it. So I was just thinking, is there any other ones? There were.
Well, you had to help me out. You told me this before the show, and you helped me out with song titles because there were a couple of those techno ones when they were doing the starting lineups.
Yep.
I even forgot. What's the artist in the title of the song?
The Darude with Sandstorm.
Okay.
That's kind of like the go-to one, and then they had Zombie Nation with Kerncraft 4000. Those are kind of the big two.
And those I've like heard those outside.
I always used to freak out before Kerncraft because I'm like, I know all the words to this song, like all of it. I know it. And then, oh. That's the song.
What's the second verse though? It's like when Vanilla Ice was saying that like Under Pressure is different from his song. It's like we did the so it is different, subtle, but it's there.
Change. It's not the same.
But I've like heard those songs outside of a Huskies context, and that's like I'm like, oh, this is a Husky song. Like that's what I associate it with. But those are the two that really sprung to mind. I'm glad that you brought up a couple others. Do you have any more?
Yep.
I also mentioned the Black Eyed Peas one. Tonight's gonna be a good night. That is Black Eyed Peas, right?
Correct.
I've got a feeling. Okay, so that one too.
Yep. Obviously we have I guess essentially vetoed Rock and Roll Part 2 because that's kind of an obvious choice.
It's
a lot of people
are too widespread.
Yeah. A lot of people had Enter Sandman.
That's a good one.
As one. And the one I thought of that I thought of late, and I'm happy somebody else remembered it, was Cotton Eye Joe with the Puppy Brown Panther. That used to always just kind of go ham at that time.
Those are some good ones.
Those are some good ones that I really associate with. I did finish the lyric with Fishing in the Dark during the intermission. I did that with what's that, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, I believe. So
I think that's right.
So that one kind of sticks out to me. Before the game, before warm-ups, because I would always get there an hour beforehand, and before the warm-ups, I would yell at the person running to play Radar Love by Golden Earring. And they would all the time. But I don't know. I don't know why I did it, but just because I think, like, as far as like what I consider a 2-hit wonder, like Golden Earring is like up there, like with the echelon with Radar Love and oh my gosh, I can't think of. I'm blanking out on the other one.
I'm no good with song titles, but I'm familiar with the 2-hit wonder aspect of their career. Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. Yeah, that's the other one. So, but like I would just always yell to the person, play Radar Love. And then I would just always rock out to it. And I'm like the only one in the stadium who even probably cared about that song. But I would just have a blast to it. They also used to do the Jaws theme right before the third period. That always kind of stuck out to me. So, but yeah, just some ones that I thought of songs that kind of stuck out to my head during those.
There's some good ones.
Husky
good questions.
And then there's like sometimes when we get blown out, which we did in like that 04-05 season quite a bit. Like, God, you couldn't get away from Chumbawamba. Because like I remember it was like an 8-2 game against Wisconsin or something like that, and just every goal against. I get knocked down, but I get up again. And I'm like, we're not getting up again.
Lots
buddy.
of knocking down that year.
Let's just end it. So, but anyway. So, yeah, that was kind of a fun thread that Eric kind of threw out there due to it being an off weekend. And so, but anything else that we didn't get to in this?
I think this is enough. I think that's quite enough.
Yep, exactly. Thanks, everybody. If you've gotten this far, tell me why. But I appreciate everybody listening. Weldie, you can find me at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers. Andrew, you can find him at...
You can email me at huskieshockeypodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email.
Sounds perfect. Until next time, go Huskies. Woo!